Lan Haixin turned around and looked at the old siren woman. Clearly, she had never seen the relic before either. The old siren woman quickly said, "You don't have to worry, my prince. This is the relic of our race, the siren bottle. The holy bottle comes from a barren era. It was crafted from the materials harvested from ancient deified xenogeneic creatures. It cannot be faked. Plus, only the siren's holy virgin blood can activate it. Check it out, and you will see that it is real." After a brief pause, the old siren woman went on to say, "This is the last item left behind by the Holy Virgin. Why would she lie to her son? Why would I doubt that this thing is the relic?" Han Sen asked in a hard voice. "If you've never seen the relic before, how would you know?" Lan Haixin asked. "It doesn't look right. If you think that is the relic, then go ahead and take it." "I will go elsewhere and look around," Han Sen said. Then he moved to exit the hall. The old siren woman stopped him. "My prince, the Holy Virgin is like you. Her blood isn't pure. Activating the relic will require the two of you to work together. One of you cannot be missing. Let's just have a look around first." Han Sen commanded his blood Kirin to advance forward. The blood Kirin roared and headed toward one of the hall's side doors. The old siren woman was half deified, but attempting to stop the blood Kirin and Han Sen was more than she dared. So, she retreated. Lan Haixin looked at Han Sen as he left the hall. She nibbled her lips and stepped closer to the altar. "I'm not sure I can activate the holy bottle." The old siren woman stopped her and said, "Do not be reckless, my lady. The holy bottle is our race's treasure, but the power it wields is unknown. Without pure virgin blood, it will be difficult to activate it. You might even get injured. That is why the last holy virgin didn't give the holy bottle straight to the prince. You cannot risk doing this alone." Lan Haixin wasn't an idiot. She was reasonable. She sighed and said, "Fine, let us go and look around then." They left the hall. The Crystal Palace had many pavilions, and there were many rooms and statues. It looked like a real city made of crystal. It was so beautiful that simply walking through it was relaxing. Han Sen made sure to move very carefully, but he didn't notice anything dangerous. There were no barred doors to be found across the entire Crystal Palace. He could enter any building he wanted, despite there being nothing valuable within them. The Crystal Palace was like a city that had been emptied of its people. It looked very pretty, yes, but it also looked very dead. Lan Haixin followed behind Han Senator as they walked around the Crystal Palace. She felt far safer. Inside the Crystal Palace, there were no dangerous restrictions. That proved that the last Holy Virgin only wanted by to have the holy bottle. There was nothing else of note, but all of a sudden, Han Sen noticed a problem. He pointed to one corner of the Crystal Palace, and he said, "What is this?" Lan Haixin and the others followed Han Sen's pointing finger and saw a crystal wall. Unlike the other crystal walls, however, this one had some green moss growing on it. Weird. Why is there moss here? Lan Haixin felt baffled as she walked towards the crystal wall. That moss had taken over the entire wall. It reached a long way up above the ground, and when Han Sen looked closer, there were obvious signs that something had been climbing across it recently. There wasn't just a single set of tracks either. It looked like something had passed through frequently. Lan Haixin and the old siren woman's faces changed. How is that possible? Has another creature taken residence in the Crystal Palace? Han Sen observed the tracks, and all the while, his purple-eye butterfly kept spinning. He soon learned that he was very familiar with those tracks. They had been left behind by the Crystal God Conch and Move Mountain Sea Conch. This confirms that those two were related to the Crystal Palace, but how did they leave this place? Han Sen looked at the crystal wall some more, and he soon noticed something else. There was a very small, sand grain-sized hole in the wall. Perhaps there was an imperfection in the building materials, or maybe it was a mistake in construction. Either way, a small hole had been left on the surface. The hole was narrower than a needle. An ordinary creature couldn't fit through it, but the conches had been adept at shrinking their bodies. They would have had little difficulty coming and going as they pleased. Moss was growing on the wall because they had tracked it in when they came through the hole. Fortunately, they had already been killed by Han Sen and the little red bird. The group walked around the Crystal Palace some more, but they found no signs of other creatures living there. "My prince, the last holy virgin wouldn't seek to hurt you. Let's just go and claim the holy bottle before something bad happens, the old siren woman said hurriedly. Han Sen hesitated, then he thought of something. He didn't believe the danger was gone, but he had an idea. He nodded. Okay, we can give it a try then. Judging from what he had seen, the conches probably stumbled into the Crystal Palace by accident. They hadn't originated from the Crystal Palace, but had cleared out all of the high-class Energeneics. It didn't make sense that a deified and a king-class Energeneic would still be hiding there. But if he considered how the two creatures had reached their ranks, that might explain it. Maybe the conches weren't originally deified and king-class. For some reason, they became deified and king-class during their time inside the Crystal Palace. But from the barren nature of the place, it seemed that the only thing inside Crystal Palace capable of having such an effect was the siren bottle. If the conches leveled up because of the siren bottle, Han Sen thought about it, and his heart started to race. The bottle had made a Xenogeneic deified. Every deified elite would want something like this. Because of that, Han Sen changed his mind. He wanted to see if he could use the siren bottle for himself. With a chance of securing such a massive windfall, it was worth taking a large risk. Plus, the little red bird was present. That should mitigate whatever risk there might be. Seeing that Han Sen was finally willing to return to the holy bottle, the old siren woman hastily guided him back. Soon after, everyone gathered back in the hall. The siren bottle still sat silently atop the altar. The old siren woman reminded them, "Holy Virgin, you and the prince should ascend to the platform and bleed a drop of your blood into the holy bottle. If it is activated, the bottle will select its master." After that, she looked at Han Sen and said, "My prince, the blood power from both of you will melt into the holy bottle. The chance of ownership will be 50-50. Regardless of who obtains the bottle, I hope we can all cooperate." "Of course." Han Sen nodded, and then he walked towards the altar alongside Lan Haixin. The two of them moved cautiously, but nothing happened on their way. Han Sen and Lan Haixin reached the platform safely. They looked at each other. Lan Haixin gritted her teeth, extended a finger, and let a drop of blood fall into the siren bottle. Han Sen looked into the bottle and saw the familiar, blurry rainbow color. He couldn't see anything else. After Lan Haixin's droplet of blood fell in, the liquid disappeared into the rainbow as if nothing had happened.
Han Sen hesitated.
He cast his original Water King body, then put a drop of water into the bottle. Han Sen's water fell straight into the siren bottle, and then the siren bottle started to shake like mad. The blurry rainbow swirled like a whirlpool, and it looked as if it would erupt at any second. While the rainbow raged the bottle itself started to float.
Han Sen's face pallid.
A bad feeling suddenly washed over him. He hastily backed away from the altar and returned to the blood Kirin. Lan Haixin was still staring at that shining siren bottle. Not recognizing the danger rising before her, she was still waiting for the siren bottle to select its master. When the other sirens saw that the siren bottle had been activated, they knelt and began to bow before it. They also mumbled words Han Sen didn't understand. He assumed it was the language of the siren. Boom! The siren bottle's rainbow light exploded out. The bottle's halo expanded, looking like a pillar of light reaching for the top of the Crystal Palace. After the blurry rainbow touched the Crystal Palace's ceiling, it began to spread. It started to seep all across the Crystal Palace. The entire structure started to shine brightly, as if the whole thing had been doused in the morning light. The altar's secret substance chain was affected by the blurry rainbow, too. It started to shine, as well. Many magical spells began to play across the top of the altar. Lan Haixin finally noticed that something was wrong. They all turned to look at Han. Senator Lan Haixin abandoned the altar to ask Han Sen, "What is this? You are asking me? How am I supposed to know? I told you earlier that there was a problem with this thing, but you guys chose to ignore the warning." Han Sen wanted to leave the Crystal Palace, but the main door had been barred by rainbow-colored light. Han Sen tried to open it a few times, but each attempt ended with him being tossed back by the power of those rainbows. Although the light fountained everywhere, it didn't hurt anyone. But Han Sen was unable to go out, and so he was still stuck there with the rest of them. You and your mother planned this so you could trick us, the old siren woman screamed, pointing at Han Sen.
Han Sen ignored her.
She was obviously a moron, and there was no point in trying to understand her. The siren couldn't leave the hall. The old siren woman pointed at Han Sen and said, "Grab him. I don't believe that B*TCH would leave her son behind." Han Sen stared at the idiotic old siren woman for a long moment. "Are you having a stroke or something?" The siren still surrounded Han Sen, though, and he didn't know what they were thinking. The half-deified old woman was their strongest member. The others were all king class. Han Sen's blood Kirin had half-deified powers. He didn't understand how the old siren woman could have thought that command was a good idea. The siren looked a little hesitant, though. They surrounded Han Sen, but they made no attempt to attack him. "Take him. That is the only way we will survive," the old siren woman screamed. She lifted her coral staff and gathered up a watery power. It became a water dragon that shot out towards the blood Kirin. The other sirens moved to help the old siren woman. They wanted to take Han Sen down together. The blood Kirin had a very short fuse. It spat out some blood air that destroyed the old siren woman's water dragon. Then it activated its blood area and stepped forward to attack the sirens that surrounded them. Han Sen placed Lily on the blood Kirin's back, then touched the blood Kirin's head. He shouted, "There's no need to attack them. She's the problem." The siren were given a shock. Han Sen was indicating the old woman. The old siren woman coldly grunted, "Even now, you still try to divide us? You are evil. We were blind and unable to tell you were this evil. You better tell us what conspiracy you and that B*TCH cooked up. Don't be angry with us that we're about to harm a member of our own family." After that, the old siren woman used her staff against the blood Kirin. The blood Kirin roared in return and ran forward to fight the old siren woman. The old siren woman couldn't compete against the blood Kirin, though. The area she created wasn't enough to block the pervasive blood area unleashed by the blood Kirin. She was at an immediate disadvantage. "What are you waiting for? Take them down. This is our only chance of living," the old siren woman screamed. The siren kings moved forward to fight, but Lan Haixin's face looked hesitant. "Lan Haixin, think about this. Who was the one that allowed you to open the relic? Who was the one that brought you here? Who was the one that said the bottle was the relic? Who was the one that provoked this fight?"
Han Sen shouted to Lan Haixin.
His hands clutched the head of the blood Kirin. He wasn't going to allow the blood Kirin to attack anyone aside from the old siren woman. Han Sen wasn't trying to be nice by sparing their lives. Instead, he was reasonably confident that the old siren woman wanted him to kill all the siren there. This ploy was way too obvious. The old siren woman knew that they would be unable to fight Han Sen and the blood Kirin, so she was being stubborn. Han Sen didn't believe that this half-deified woman had survived the destruction of her race while remaining this stupid. That was, unless there was something she wanted. If the old siren woman really wanted to kill Han Sen, she would have attacked Han Sen herself. But her target was the blood Kirin. This decision drove the blood Kirin's bloodlust to even greater heights. The whole of the extreme king knew that the blood Kirin was a cruel and ill-tempered beast. Otherwise, it wouldn't have murdered someone in King's Garden. The old siren woman's behavior wasn't natural. Even if she convinced the siren to fight, they still wouldn't be able to defeat Han Sen and the blood Kirin. At the very best, they might achieve a draw. And that wouldn't be a very good result for the siren. The only possibility was that the old siren woman wanted to do harm to the siren as a whole. It wasn't about him exclusively. Han Sen didn't want to be used as a tool to kill the siren. That was why he held the blood Kirin's head to keep it from killing them. But the blood Kirin's temper was too cruel. Han Sen couldn't control it. The blood Kirin kept being provoked by the old siren woman, and because of this, the blood air got scarier and scarier. The creature couldn't hold in its emotions. Arg! The blood Kirin landed a blow on the old siren woman. Her body flew away and crashed into one of the palace's crystal walls. She coughed up some blood. "Holy Virgin, do you not understand? If we don't kill to survive, the siren will all be murdered here and now. Bai and his B*TCH mother are going to ruin our race." The old siren woman was covered in blood. Her hair was messed up, and it looked as if she was on the verge of crying. The blood Kirin didn't hesitate, though. It roared and went toward the old siren woman. Han Sen couldn't stop it. Stop!
Lang Hai Sin sao tét.
The Siren Kings moved to fight Han Sen and the Blood Kirin, too. They wanted to stop the Blood Kirin's advance. Han Sen's eyes looked cold. He knew that the old woman had successfully provoked the other sirens. Lan Haixin, I hope you don't regret your decision, Han Sen said in an emotionless voice. He let go of the Blood Kirin's head, then pulled out the Thunder God spike and ghost teeth knife that were attached to his waist. The Blood Kirin roared and leaped at the old siren woman. The blood air glowed with a deep scarlet light. It swept forward, looking like it was going to rip the old siren woman in half. Lan Haixin and a few of the other Siren Kings came forward in an attempt to stop Han Sen. I only want her. This has nothing to do with any of the rest of you. Anyone who tries to stop me will forfeit their life.
Han Sen sighed grimly.
It didn't look like he was going to fall back. There was another way that Han Sen could have resolved this situation, but the direct approach would be much faster. He had no interest in making sacrifices for the good of the sirens, or in being held responsible for their mistakes and stupidity. Han Sen slashed and thrust, and the area around him turned into a chaotic blur of knife airs and sword lights. He cut off the Siren Kings while the Blood Kirin surged after the old siren woman. The old siren woman screamed, I will use the siren sacrifice to seal them. You guys look for an opening to attack them. Elder, no. The sirens were all in shock. The old siren woman gathered herself up bravely. A blue water light spread out like blooming flowers as a scary presence began to rise within her. A siren-shaped shadow landed on her, and her presence suddenly erupted like a volcano. The blue water light slid out of the old siren woman and became blue tentacles that wrapped around the Blood Kirin. The Blood Kirin broke the tentacles, but more were fast approaching. They managed to trap Han Sen and the Blood Kirin in their knotted grasp. Elder, why are you doing this? Lan Haixin looked pale. She knew exactly what the old siren woman was doing. The other sirens were feeling much the same way. They knew that using siren sacrifice meant spending one's life. The old siren woman was laying down her life, and she obviously didn't mean to bring them harm. Many of the sirens looked at Han Sen and the Blood Kirin with gut-wrenching hatred. After all, it was Han Sen and the Blood Kirin that had pushed her to throw away her life and cast siren sacrifice. Han Sen knew that his last chance of getting through to them had disappeared. The old siren woman's move had been cruelly effective. No matter what he said, the other sirens would no longer trust him. It doesn't matter anyway. It's not my job to preserve the lives of these idiots. If they want to die this badly, then not even a saint could stop them. I am just Han Sr. Han Sen calmly looked at the old siren woman. He pushed against the blue light tentacles, and the brave-looking old siren woman gave him a mocking smile. This time, Lan Haixin didn't need to give the order for the sirens to attack the Blood Kirin and Han Senator. The sirens rushed forward to kill them the moment that the old siren woman trapped them. As you wish, Han Sen murmured to himself. He used his original Water King bodies area and the Sea Dragon area. Many areas collided within the palace. Han Sen pulled out his knife, and the Blood Kirin let out a thunderous roar. He ripped through the blue light tentacles to charge at the old siren woman. Knives and swords flickered all around them as the sirens attacked Han Sen and the Blood Kirin furiously. The Siren Kings were filled with bloodlust, and Han Sen had to deal with them and fight through the tentacles at the same time. The situation was a very dire and dangerous one. The sirens tried their best, and the old siren woman made sure to look as sad and brave as possible. She was spending her own life force to sustain the demonic siren shadows, and it looked as if her light was about to fail. She was still struggling to hold on, though. All 7 of her holes were bleeding. Her hair had turned white, and it looked as if she was dying. Suddenly, the old siren woman coughed up some blood. Her body was shaking, and it looked as if she was about to keel over. Elder,
Lang Hai Sin sao tét.
Forget about me. I deserve to die. I cannot allow the siren to be destroyed right before my eyes. I will protect the siren and their blood, even if it costs me my life, the old siren woman screamed. The blue light exploded again in even greater volume. It looked like she had poured all of her remaining life force into this last blast. The siren's eyes were red as they were filled with anger and grief. They used 120% of their power. They wanted to use this final chance to take out Han Sen and the Blood Kirin. Lan Haixin, you can still come back if you stop this now, Han Sen said from atop the Blood Kirin. He looked directly at Lan Haixin. Lily was sitting behind Han Sen and holding tight to his waist. This fight was out of her league. If not for Han Sen, the streams of power would already have torn her apart. Why must you and your mother bring harm to the sirens? Even if we did something bad to you guys, you still have siren blood inside you. Can you not let go of the hatred in your hearts? Why must you try to kill us? Lan Haixin looked sad as she spoke. I told you. This is none of my business. She is the one who set you guys up. Han Sen pointed at the old siren woman as he spoke. Bai, why are you still talking like this? Do you think we are idiots or something? A siren king bellowed. Today, I will kill you on behalf of the elder. Another siren king roared. Kill him. I have given you guys 3 chances. What happens now is on you. Han Sen lifted his weapon and thrust it forward. Suddenly, the entire hall was webbed with knife silks. They appeared everywhere, and they were pressing forward. Blurg. Fresh blood splattered throughout the palace. The knife silks killed the sirens and sliced through the blue light tentacles. Limbs and blood were flying through the air, and suddenly, the whole hall was turned red. Everyone in the hall, aside from Han Sen, Lily, the Blood Kirin, Lan Haixin, Bauer, and the old siren woman, had been killed. The siren kings had all been dismembered. Some of the siren kings were still breathing, but having lost their limbs, they could only scream hoarsely as they wallowed in their own blood. Lan Haixin's eyes widened, and she just stood there. She looked terrified, hopeless, disbelieving. A myriad of emotions flickered across her face. You! Lan Haixin's body was trembling as she pointed at Han Senator. She hadn't expected this to be the end. She hadn't expected Han Sen to be so strong. I did as you wished. Are you happy now? Han Sen ignored Lan Haixin and spoke to the old siren woman. Haha, I can see now that you truly are of that *TSH's blood. Your hearts are deep, but it doesn't make a difference, even if you did see through my plan. I still played you. The old siren woman cackled. She didn't look sad, and her dying body suddenly looked very alive. Lan Haixin stared at the old siren woman. She couldn't believe her eyes. The siren blood on the ground began to move. It raced to the altar and dyed the altar red. Elder, why? Lan Haixin looked at the old siren woman with utter disbelief. Her voice trembled. Why? The old siren woman's face was twisted. She gritted her teeth and said, I want to know why, too. I want to know why I am so talented, and yet, not a single siren was able to appreciate my accomplishments. Is it because I don't have the blood of the Holy Virgin? Is that why that *TCH became the Holy Virgin instead? If a traitor like that was able to become the Holy Virgin, why couldn't I? I waited many years for that *TH to die, but they let you, a girl who didn't even have pure blood, become the Holy Virgin instead. I want to know why they never considered giving me the chance. I'm so smart. No one amongst the siren could do the things that I've done. But just because I don't have a drop of the Holy Virgin's blood, I have to be considered a mere commoner? In this world, there's no point in asking why. Things only belong to you if you fight for them. The old siren woman gave a twisted laugh. Now, I finally have this chance. If the sirens aren't willing to accept me, then I will destroy this entire race. I will offer my blood to the siren bottle and conjure a new race, one which will worship me as their alpha. Because of that, you are willing to kill off the last of our kind? Lan Haixin looked very sad. They are nothing. As long as I have the siren bottle, I can be deified. I can create a race of my own. The old siren woman sounded a little crazy. You don't have the Holy Virgin blood. You cannot control the siren bottle. All you have done is for nothing. Lan Haixin looked unspeakably sad. The old siren woman laughed. You will just have to thank that *TCH then. She wanted her hybrid son to claim the holy bottle. She built this crystal palace and the blood altar here and made a deal with you. She did all of this for his benefit. She only used you for your blood. With this altar, the siren blood, and the refinement of the holy bottle, I can control it, even without the Holy Virgin's blood. I suffered much humiliation when I was young, but I sided with that B*TC. I did everything I could to earn her trust. I almost died multiple times during my service to her. Even my son died for her. I sacrificed so much to gain her faith. Now, I'm the only one who can wield this technique. That B*T would have never imagined I was scheming to betray her. She never knew I was the one that killed her. She couldn't even tell her secret to her hybrid son. Now, everything belongs to me. I will be the next race's alpha. After saying this, the old siren woman laughed like mad. She seemed utterly self-assured. You seem to have forgotten I'm still here. Han Sen looked at that old siren woman with pride. The old siren woman's smile vanished as she looked at Han Sr. You aren't bad. You must be as devious as that B*T to have hidden things for so long. Your own plan was decent, but you were still too young, and you ended up killing all the siren. What a shame. Now, the blood altars process has begun, and the holy bottle is in the midst of being refined. Although it cannot be fully used yet, I only need to borrow a little of its power to kill both you and the blood Kirin. I don't believe that you are completely without holy virgin blood. How can you use the holy bottle's power without it? Han Sen asked. Han Sen had guessed the old siren woman's plan a while ago, but he hadn't killed her yet because he wanted the siren bottle as well. He had the same problem as the old siren woman. He had the original Water King body, but he didn't have the holy virgin blood. The holy bottle wouldn't accept him as its master. And this wasn't just because Han Sen had replaced Bai Yi either. Even Bai Yi's mother didn't believe the young prince would be able to make use of the bottle. So, she set up the blood altar. She needed a blood sacrifice so that Bai Yi could control the siren bottle, but that should still be impossible for Han Sen. Han Sen wanted to know the old siren woman's plan. She must have some method for controlling the siren bottle. So, he didn't yet strike her down. It is okay. Soon, you will believe. I'm going to use both of you hybrids as a sacrifice. Then, I will be able to control the siren bottle and create a race of my own. I will be the alpha and leader of it, the old siren woman said. She walked towards the altar and picked up the siren bottle. Obsession was etched deep into the lines of her face. Lan Haixin used her area power in a bid to stop the old woman, but as soon as Lan Haixin moved onto the altar's rainbow light bounced her back. She was unable to access that zone. The old siren woman lifted the bottle and laughed. That cheap B*TCH wasn't at my level, but she was still better than the two of you. You two hybrids will die today. Han Sen looked at the old siren woman with interest and said, You're going to kill me? Aren't you afraid that the extreme king will hunt you down? The old siren woman grinned and looked at him with disdain. I watched Bai Yi grow up. Aside from that B*TCH, no one else understood him more than I. You are not Bai Yi. I don't know how you did what you did. Perhaps it was a similar skill to consume? But regardless, your ability to open the Crystal Palace door proves that you refine the hybrid Bai Yi's blood. I get your blood and give you to King Bai. He will appreciate that, I think. I can get the siren bottle and receive King Bai's reward. I must say, God seems to be on my side. Ha. Lan Haixin looked at Han Sen with proper shock. She had never realized the Bai Yi in front of her was a fake. But she never thought someone would be brave enough to disguise themselves as a prince of the extreme king, either. Instead of denying the accusation, Han Sen admitted it. He stood silently and watched the old siren woman. Her hands were glowing. Power was coming out of her hands and flowing into the siren bottle. The siren bottle's wings were like the faces of siren women. They looked alive. Their eyes shone with light, and blue waves rippled across them. They made sad sniffling noises like an instrument was playing. Not long after, a water drop arose inside the bottle. The old siren woman happily grabbed the drop and put it into her mouth. Her body began to glow and change. Rainbow color light rinsed over her, and the old siren woman's tree bark-like face changed. Her age and wrinkles disappeared, and she became an 18-year-old girl with skin that was smooth and white. Her fish scales looked transparent and crystal, and they glowed with rainbow light. Her entire body had been completely renewed, and her presence changed along with it. The crystal god Conch became deified because of that siren bottle. Han Sen looked at the siren elder. She didn't look old anymore. It looked as if she had returned to being a young woman. The siren elder swung her fishtail, and waves surged out behind her as she swam away from the blood altar and went toward Han Sen and Lan Haixin. She laughed haughtily. As long as I possess the holy bottle, anything I desire is within my grasp. After that, the siren elder waved her hand. A rainbow light fired at Han Sen and Lan Haixin. Her powers were now very different than her original abilities, and her attack was similar to the blurry rainbow lights that were visible inside the siren bottle. The blurry rainbow lights came down, transforming into crystal bottles around Han Sen and the others to trap them. Han Sen had seen the crystal god Conch use an almost identical power, and now he knew for sure that the power had come from the siren bottle. But the siren elder was weaker than the crystal god Conch had been. She generated a substance chain power, but it was very weak. It wasn't solid like the crystal god Conch's substance chains. It looks like she can't really control the power of the siren bottle, but how did the crystal god Conch wield the siren bottle's power so well? It couldn't have activated the siren bottle, and it didn't have the siren blood necessary to perform the sacrifice either, Han Sen thought to himself. Lan Haixin's power struck the crystal bottle, but the attempt was futile. Her attack struck the surface of the bottle with king-class power, but it wasn't enough to even rattle it on the spot. Haha, it is useless. This is the siren bottle's power. Allow me to take your blood, so that I may use it on the siren bottle. When I control it in its entirety, I will achieve even more power, and then I can start my own race that will exist all across the universe. I will become an alpha. A maniacal grin split the siren elder's face, and the rainbow colors that enshrouded her became even brighter. The glass bottle grew smaller as the siren elder applied pressure to it. She wanted to squash the people inside it. Little red bird. Han Sen understood how the siren elder was making use of the siren bottle, but he didn't hesitate to summon the little red bird. The little red bird fluttered over to Baoer's shoulder, then it hopped onto Han Sen's finger and chirped at him. We're about done here. Get rid of this old hag, but leave her final few breaths to me. I want to finish her off myself, Han Sen commanded the little red bird. The siren elder looked as if she had heard a funny joke, and she laughed. This isn't the end yet, and you are already going crazy. Boom. The words had barely left the siren elder's mouth when the little red bird took flight. Flames began to lick around her body as she rose from Han Sen's finger. Suddenly, the little red bird turned into a gold fire phoenix. The phoenix wings gave a couple of powerful beats, raising swathes of fire that charred the walls of the glass bottle. The substance chains that composed the crystal walls were like paper. The flames danced across them, and they were incinerated into ashes in a flash. It looks like the siren elder's power is far inferior to the crystal god Conch's. This is like a fake deified's power, Han Sen thought to himself. Deified xenogenic. No. Impossible. The siren elder's eyes were wide, filled with utter disbelief at what she saw. Lan Haixin couldn't believe it, either. She stared in amazement at the little red bird that had turned into a fire phoenix. The two sirens were familiar with the little red bird already, as Baoer played with the creature every day, and she especially liked to bully it. Lan Haixin sometimes felt sorry for the little thing, but it had never seemed to mind getting bullied by Baoer. It continued to follow her at all times. That little red bird was actually a deified xenogeniac. The thought was mind-boggling, but the truth couldn't be denied. The fire phoenix that the little red bird had turned into was now flying towards the old siren woman, and when it reached her, it spat out a golden fireball. The siren elder screamed, her voice thrumming weirdly around them. Her body was shining, and that light became a glass bottle that tried to encase the little red bird, but it turned to dust the instant it came close to those fires. The flames lashed wildly towards the siren elder. The siren elder was unable to dodge. She gathered up her angelic godlight to block the attacks with her hands, but when her hands touched the fire, they started to burn. And then, her whole body was aflame. Arg, no. This is impossible. I want to be an alpha. I want to receive this holy bottle. The Siren Elder screamed angrily as the cruel fire consumed her. Not long after, her burned body was turned to ash. That wasn't a real deified power, huh? It looks like her methods were riddled with flaws. Bai Yi and Lan Haixin's blood have to be combined to control the siren bottle. Han Sen pulled out his ghost teeth knife. He walked forward and cut off the dying Siren Elder's head. Mutant xenogeneic king hunted. Siren lady. Mutant xenogeneic gene found. After Han Sen killed the Siren Elder, the fire continued to burn. The Siren Elder's body turned into ash. A blue gem that must have been her xenogeneic gene sat amidst the gray. But I didn't get her beast soul. Han Sen grabbed the gem and held it in the palm of his hand. Han Sen placed the blue gem into his chest pocket, then approached the altar. Pang! Han Sen tried going to the altar, but the blurry rainbow stopped him short. Han Sen frowned. He simulated the Siren Elder, but he still couldn't access the altar. Lan Haixin bit her lips and said, "It looks like you have wasted your efforts here. You won't be able to get the holy bottle, after all." Han Sen ignored her. She looked at the siren bottle for a while and suddenly said, "It is you, right? The siren's final holy virgin, Bai Yi's mom? You are a clever kid." A woman's voice came out of the siren bottle. The blurry rainbow in the bottle came into focus, turning into a beautiful siren woman who hung at the entrance. She had white ears and white scales. Her skin looked like jade, and it was even smoother than Han Sen's jade skin. Her hair was long and black, and it reached down to her waist. Her eyes were like obsidian. Her face was very attractive, and a soft smile warmed her expression. "Ho! Holy Virgin!" Lan Haixin stared at the woman by the siren bottle in shock. She didn't know how to compose herself at that moment. All the things she thought could never happen had transpired in such an incredibly short time. Lan Haixin felt like her entire lifetime hadn't contained as many unexpected twists as the last 10 minutes. "Little Xin, you are still as cute and naive as ever." The white-scaled woman smiled at Lan Haixin as she spoke. Why are you here?" "I thought you were..." Lan Haixin was having difficulty composing her sentences. The situation was so incredibly unexpected that her mind was struggling to adapt. The woman sighed and said, "Some unforeseen problems occurred during my evolution, and Little Yun tried to kill me. She forced my hand, and I had to put myself into the siren bottle to stay alive." Han Sen understood now. The Little Yun she had referenced was undoubtedly the Siren Elder. It seemed that she had never actually won over Bai Yi's mother. The plan she concocted was actually just a part of Bai Yi's mother's grand conspiracy. Even when she failed to evolve, she had actually won. The woman then looked at Han Senator. She still wore that soft smile, and she said, "My son, I'm glad to see you here. You must have heard what the Siren Elder said." "I'm not your son, Bai Yi," Han Sen said simply. The woman nodded. "I know. Bai Yi wasn't my son, anyway." When the woman said that, Lan Haixin reeled in shock. Even Han Sen was astonished. The woman explained, "I am the Siren Virgin. I must keep my body pure. I had no choice but to marry into the Extreme King, but I made a deal with King Bai. I would be known as his wife, but when it came to child-making, that would be done by another Siren woman that I kept close by. That person couldn't have been the Siren Elder, could it?" Han Sen's heart jumped. The woman gave Han Sen an appreciative look. She spoke softly to him, saying, "Yes, it was indeed Little Yun, and she only slept with King Bai once. She didn't actually know about my deal with King Bai, and she never realized that I was still a virgin." Han Sen shuddered, and he said, "Bai Yi was her son? Kid, I like you more and more." The woman smiled at Han Sen, but she didn't answer his question. The realization felt like a chill sinking deep into Han Sen's bones. His guess had been correct, he assumed. The Siren Elder said she had given her son for this woman, but the white-scaled woman didn't actually have a child. Bai Yi had the blood of King Bai and a siren. The only possibility was that Bai Yi was the Siren Elder's son, but this white-scaled woman had used some trick to take the baby for herself. The Siren Elder had no idea, and she had believed for all this time that her son was dead. What a frightening woman. The Siren Elder never guessed that Bai Yi was her son. It's lucky she didn't find out. Otherwise, She would have done everything for Bai Yi, and she probably would have exposed me to King Bai. Han Sen looked at the woman's sweet smile and felt relieved. Kid, how about you and I strike a deal? The woman smiled at Han Sen. What kind of deal? Han Sen asked. You know of my situation. My body is destroyed, and I live inside the siren bottle. If I do not find a body, I will fade away. You have disguised yourself as Bai Yi. He was not my son, but he was the son of King Bai. I assume you are aware of what might happen if King Bai learned that you killed Bai Yi. The woman was straightforward, which Han Sen appreciated. I can help you deal with that, and I can help you make use of the siren bottle's power. But you will also have to find me a body to use. What do you think? That doesn't sound like a bad deal. I will agree to it, Han Sen said. The woman seemed surprised. She hadn't expected Han Sen to agree so quickly. Her smile deepened. Kid, I like you more and more. I can help you, but I do have a condition, Han Sen said. Speak then. The woman nodded. You can call me by name, or you can just say hey or yo, or whatever. Just stop calling me a kid, Han Sen said seriously. The woman grinned at Han Sen and said, Fine, I understand. Then let's go, Han Sen said, nodding to the woman. If you ever require my help, knock on the left side of the siren bottle. The woman met Han Sen's eyes, and the siren bottle stopped shining. The rainbow drained back into the siren bottle, taking the woman with it. The siren bottle left the altar and flew into Han Sen's hand. The light disappeared, and the siren bottle looked like nothing more than an ordinary crystal bottle. Han Sen looked at the siren bottle for a moment, then put it away. That woman was strong. She had the siren relic, the siren bottle, as a base for her current existence. It was likely that not even the little red bird could deal with her. They had a temporary agreement to work together, as they really had no reason to fight each other. If something happened that caused them to butt heads, things would turn very bad very quickly. The woman had used the siren elder to bring the rest of the siren there to be killed. She clearly required the blood of the siren. Her plan had probably involved killing Bai Yi and Lan Haixin as well. But because Han Sen had been present, he had foiled the woman's plan. She was probably uncertain about Han Sen and his capabilities, so she had chosen to form an alliance with him. She couldn't be trusted, though. He knew that. But right now, working for her was a good thing for Han Senator, so he had decided not to expose her. They both had something to gain, and they needed each other. So, they joined forces without much trouble or negotiating. Lan Haixin looked bewildered. She had listened to the entire conversation leading up to the deal between Han Sen and the woman, and she still didn't really understand what had happened. It sounded like some strange sort of joke. What are you doing? Han Sen approached, and Lan Haixin grew pale. She knew she was weak, and she couldn't escape. Han Sen had a deified firebird. Even if he was alone, she couldn't hope to fight him. I'm taking my wife home. What else can I do? Han Sen took Lan Haixin's arm and smiled. Don't you dare. You killed all of my people. I will not be with you. Lan Haixin tried to shake his hand loose, but she couldn't free herself. Han Sen began tugging her away from the palace. Their deaths were a result of your stupidity. Even if I hadn't cut them down, the Siren Elder would have killed everyone here, Han Sen said, his voice dispassionate. Lan Haixin opened her mouth, but the words of response never came. She looked pale, and a desperate thought crossed her mind. If you are going to commit suicide, I will not stop you. But think about this. You are the last siren with virgin blood. You are the last hope of your people. If you die now, it will be game over for the siren, Han Sen said harshly. Lan Haixin struggled to maintain her composure, and she did not speak. Back in Underwater Town, Han Sen decided to leave Bauer in the company of Lan Haixin, in case the siren tried to do something that would give him a headache later on. A commoner could die, and no trouble would be caused, but if a princess died, that could have dire repercussions for Planet Water Zone. King Bai and many others would take the event quite seriously. So, Han Sen needed to keep an eye on Lan Haixin. Fortunately, with Bauer by the woman's side, he wasn't worried about her doing anything to rock the boat. Brother 16, have you considered my proposal? Bai Ling Shuang's video suddenly appeared on his phone. We can talk about this later. I'm not certain I will be able to reach the peak of Rot Bone Mountain. If I make this agreement and subsequently fail, I will only let you down, Han Sen said. That is okay. As long as you try your best, I won't attempt to exact vengeance, even if you fail. And I will still give you your rewards, Bai Ling Shuang said. Are you sure you can promise that? Han Sen looked hesitant. Brother 16, tell me what you want. I will not be stingy in what I offer. If you want share, big sister is happy to give her to you. Bai Ling Shuang smiled. You're really willing to give me share? Han Sen sounded desperately hopeful, as if he was smitten in the throes of love. Bai Ling Shuang smiled. Brother 16, the foxes cannot be trusted. You don't really want a fox as a guard, do you? You don't want to let her go, Sister Tin? Han Sen sounded sad. Bai Ling Shuang shook her head. Men have no resistance when it comes to foxes. It isn't that I want to keep her from you. I'm just afraid that something bad might happen if I don't. If you don't want to let share go, Sister Tin, then give me 100 king-class xenogeneic genes. Han Sen looked annoyed as he made this request. Han Sen didn't actually want share, of course. He had only requested her so he could suggest the bounty of xenogeneic genes as an alternative. 100 king-class xenogeneic genes was a lot to ask for. Even Bai Ling Shuang would feel a loss of that magnitude. Of course, if Bai Ling Shuang gave share to him instead, Han Sen would take her. If he had control of share, he might be able to use her against Fox Queen. It would be perfect for him. Bai Ling Shuang frowned. 100 king-class xenogeneic genes was too much. Even with her wealth, she couldn't accept such an offer easily. She fell silent for a while. Then she looked back at Han Sr. How about this, Brother 16? I will give you 50 king-class xenogeneic genes. If you help me reach the top of Rot Bone Mountain, I will give you another 50. If you are unable to reach the top of the mountain, you can keep that first 50 just for putting in the effort. What do you think of that? Sure. Han Sen accepted the suggested bargain immediately. Getting 50 king-class genes would be perfect for Han Sen, regardless of the circumstances. Will you come to Night Charm Town? Or do you want me to send them to you? Bai Ling Shuang asked in a level voice, fixing her hair as she spoke. Let me come to Night Charm Town. I miss Cher. You wouldn't be too stingy to let her spend a night with me, would you, Sister Tin? Han Sen asked greedily. Bai Ling Shuang wasn't fond of Han Sen's avarice, but she still agreed. Bauer and the little red bird were in Underwater Town, so Han Sen wasn't afraid that something ill would befall Lan Haixin and Lily. Things went smoothly. Han Sen stayed with Cher for a night, but instead of doing what Bai Ling Shuang thought they would be, they laid on the bed and shared information. Han Sen brought the 50 king-class xenogeneic genes home with him, but he couldn't make use of them yet. When he reached king class, Duke genes would be useless to him, so he needed to focus on obtaining Duke genes for now. Using the king-class genes while he was still a Duke would be a waste. Han Sen put the king-class xenogeneic genes in storage and went to King's Garden. There, he absorbed a lot of King Air to increase his Duke gene tally. Bai Yi was now considered one of the most powerful royal children. The fact that Han Sen was no longer provoking the ire of the real royal children was an indication of his strength. And getting a primary root King Dragon was not difficult. Because he had access to the richest King Air, Han Sen could gain many Duke genes in a single day. He unlocked 3 gene locks in each of his 4 Geno arts, and he still had some time before the big exam. Jade Skin's element could fortify the body and provide ice-sealing powers. Mutant Blood had the element of blood and a genetic power. The Blood Pulse Sutra was slightly different in that it had the element of time and space. And as for the Dongxin Sutra, Han Sen had no idea what category it belonged to. The story of Gene's element was eternity. It was able to freeze things. As he gained control of different elements, the power of eternity would change and adapt. If he could use it well, it would become very powerful. After the story of Genes opened its 3rd gene lock, Han Sen noticed a change when he used the story of Genes. A strange connection was forged with the black crystal armor. Although the connection was weak, Han Sen could feel that the black crystal armor had a life force and will. Is the black crystal armor a living thing? Is there something residing within the black crystal armor? Han Sen didn't understand. The connection was too weak, though, and it came and went. Whenever he could feel it, the connection seemed blurry, like it was distorted by static. After spell levels up to King class, I should try to learn more about the black crystal armor. Maybe I will find out what it is, Han Sen guessed to himself. King's Garden was very peaceful. The royal children were preparing for their annual exams, and no one wanted to cause any trouble before the exams were underway. Han Sen left King's Garden and returned to Underwater Town. Right after he left King's Garden, he felt a strange energy in his ship. It was coming from behind him. He looked over his shoulder and found Fox Queen sitting there. "Why are you here?" Han Sen turned back to the controls of his ship. Fox Queen remained sitting and smiled. "I am here because of Destiny's Tower. My good big sister, many people have grown suspicious of me. It is so difficult for me to protect myself. What do you want?" Han Sen said, "There is an opportunity sitting right before you, and it is virtually devoid of risk. If you can rank among the top 3 in the exam, you will gain access to Destiny's Tower," Fox Queen said. "I can enter Destiny's Tower if I make it to the top 3? Han Sen was shocked. If he had this chance, he would definitely like to go to Destiny's Tower. "Yes, but you need to be in the top 3, Fox Queen nodded with surety. "Then I have no chance. There are 2 deified royal children, and there are many half-deified. There are too many for me to beat." Han Sen shook his head. Fox Queen smiled. "Be in the top 3, or I will tell everyone that you murdered Bai Yi. The choice is yours." That woman is annoying. Han Sen still didn't like Fox Queen. If Han Sen's identity was exposed, it wouldn't benefit Fox Queen in any way. She didn't seem like the type to harm others if she wasn't going to get anything out of it. But Han Sen couldn't apply normal logic when trying to predict Fox Queen's behavior. She was a fox, and she had been imprisoned for eons. No one could be certain how she would act. Han Sen thought about it some more. He had some people he could use. After he returned to Underwater Town, he brought out his siren bottle and tapped the left side of it 3 times. A rainbow fired out of the bottle, then turned into a shadowy shape that slowly composed itself as the Siren Virgin. Han Sen told her that he had been threatened by Fox Queen. The Siren Virgin looked unconcerned. She calmly said, "Fox Queen won't sell you out, but if you can reach the top 3 in the exams and gain access to Destiny's Tower, that would be a considerable reward. My identity could be exposed any second. Why would I do something to draw so much attention?" Han Sen bore a wry smile. The Siren Virgin laughed. "Your situation is not as precarious as you believe. King Bai did grow suspicious of you, but if he wants to investigate you, there are only 3 ways he can do that. First, he could summon you directly, but I don't think he's confident that seeing you would help. He never liked Bai much as a son, anyway, so they only rarely met. I actually don't think he could tell if you were Bai or not. The second method would be to investigate you through Miss Mirror. For other people, that would be the most difficult means of detection to avoid, but for you, it would most likely be the easiest." "Why?" Han Sen cocked his head as he looked at the Siren Virgin. He had never told her the story of his time with Miss Mirror, so he didn't know what had led the Siren Virgin to this conclusion. The woman pointed at Han Sen's finger and the ring that was on it. "You are wearing the Mirror Spirit Eye ring. You are Miss Mirror's hope. Why would she go and destroy her own hope?" "Hope? What are you talking about?" Han Sen felt sudden pleasure as he realized that the Siren Virgin seemed to know something about this. The Siren Virgin smiled kindly. "Miss Mirror is called Miss Mirror because she has a Mirror Spirit King body. That body provides her with a mirroring ability. She can use her mirror body on an elite, and the stronger the elite becomes, the more she benefits. This ring is Miss Mirror's mirror body?" Han Sen looked at the ring on his finger with astonishment. The Siren Virgin nodded and said, "Yes, mirror body can only be used once. If the mirror body becomes solid and falls into someone else's hands, then Miss Mirror loses control of it. The new owner would benefit from the mirror body instead." Miss Mirror was quite well known among the Extreme King for her beauty and intelligence. In her youth, that is. The name Princess Mirror was a very famous one. Many young nobles wanted to marry her, but she was too proud to submit to being in someone's shadow. She didn't look up to any of her peers. In the end, she did marry someone, but it was a young outsider. She put the mirror body into a Mirror Spirit Eye ring and sent it to the young outsider. After pausing, the Siren Virgin went on to say, "That handsome young man didn't disappoint Miss Mirror. He was a duke, and he leveled up fast with Miss Mirror's help. Within 100 years, he had become deified. He caused a big fuss amongst the Extreme King, but sadly, he was killed in a fight, and the mirror spirit eye ring was lost. I would never have expected it to be in your possession. So, you are saying that when I wear this ring, Miss Mirror can gain something from me? What is she taking? Han Sen asked apprehensively. The Siren Virgin laughed. Don't worry. The mirror body requires your willpower and intent to function properly. Plus, the information can only be swapped when the two mirror bodies are in close proximity. You must have noticed that Miss Mirror had a ring that was similar to yours. You have to be close together for both of the rings to send messages. And the messages go both ways. You can learn what Miss Mirror's thoughts are. That was why that young man was able to level up so fast. To have gained the ring as a duke while Miss Mirror is already deified, you're either very skilled or very lucky. Her level is much higher than yours. She can't just take the ring back and give it to another person, can she? Han Sen wondered. It would be much easier for her if the ring could be transferred that simply. However, once the ring has been taken by an outsider, she cannot control it. Since you are wearing the mirror spirit eye ring, that means you have received the mirror body's approval. If you die, the mirror body will be damaged. Last time she lost the ring, when a deified died, it must have dealt a fair amount of damage to Miss Mirror's mirror body. I doubt she wants to go through that again. Otherwise, she would have already killed you and taken the mirror spirit eye ring back for herself. After all, while you are wearing the ring, she gains nothing. The Siren Virgin smiled. Han Sen didn't understand. His body wasn't deified yet, but his emotions couldn't be any less intense than Miss Mirror's. If the mirror body reflected emotions and willpower, who knew who might be getting the better end of the deal? But knowing the mirror spirit eye ring did no harm to his body, Han Sen felt much better. There was no need to worry about the ring doing anything bad to him. Plus, he now had a much better understanding of why Miss Mirror hadn't turned him into King Bai. With that clarified, Han Sen felt much safer. That means Miss Mirror won't want to see me dead, right? Han Sen felt happy. Of course she won't want you to die. She might even try to protect you. After all, if you die, her mirror body will be damaged too, and it would take her a very, very long while to recover from the damage that would be inflicted. It might even be permanent, the Siren Virgin said. You said King Bai had 3 methods. What is the third way? Han Sen asked. As the leader of the Extreme King, King Bai has many ways of obtaining intel. There is no need to worry about ordinary intel gatherers. You are a prince, so most will be unable to investigate you. But King Bai has a network for intel gathering, and it is called radio wave. They have eyes all around the universe. It is a very powerful web, and that is what should concern you the most. If your identity is exposed, it will probably be the work of radio wave, the Siren Virgin said. I don't know who might be a member of radio wave, so I cannot prevent that. Han Sen shook his head. That is okay. I can tell you everything about Bai Yi. Just do as I say, and no one will be able to prove that you are not Bai Yi, the Siren Virgin said. Over the next few days, Han Sen didn't go anywhere. He discussed Bai Yi with the Siren Virgin for hours on end, trying to memorize all the important details about the man that he could. When the exams began, every single person of the Extreme King would be watching. And of course, King Bai was going to be there. The chance of his identity being exposed would be the greatest it had ever been. Your personality and Bai Yi's are way too different. It doesn't matter how much you pretend. You two cannot be exactly the same. It is fortunate that King Bai never loved Bai Yi. Just take care not to expose yourself, and take solace in the fact that it would be hard for him to recognize Bai Yi anyway. And no matter what happens, you need to stick your guns and tell people you are Bai Yi. No matter how suspicious others become, they cannot kill you without solid evidence proving that you are not him. Siren Virgin explained things to Han Sen as clearly as she could. When Han Sen heard what she told him, he felt relieved. It was just as Siren Virgin said. King Bai had no way of verifying Han Sen's identity. If there was a remote chance that Han Sen was his son, he would not kill him. If he did, King Bai would be known as the man who murdered his own child. Even if he didn't mind the damage his reputation would incur, it would be bad news for the Extreme King. The Siren Virgin had addressed Han Sen's greatest fears, and in so doing, she had relieved a lot of his anxiety. This woman is good. No wonder she handled the Siren Elder so easily. The old woman died without even realizing what had really happened, Han Sen thought in admiration. He tried to put some power into the siren bottle, but it was like the power was sinking into a bottomless sea. None of his attempts seemed to work. There wasn't even a single metaphorical wave. After that, Han Sen didn't dare to test the bottle any further. He didn't want to invoke the ire of the Siren Virgin. The siren bottle couldn't have been any weaker than the undying bird's nest. Attempting to use it by force would be difficult and probably foolhardy. On the day of the exam, Han Sen brought the blood Kirin, Lily, Bauer, and Lan Haixin with him. It was a whole family outing. Han Sen hadn't planned on bringing Lan Haixin, since her presence could complicate things. But the exams were not just exams. They were a very important festival for the entire Extreme King Society. All of the royal families had to attend. If Han Sen didn't bring Lan Haixin with him, others would find it very suspicious. The Extreme King became very festive around the exams. When Han Sen and Lan Haixin arrived at the exam site, it was already really crowded. Many of the Extreme King nobles had come there to watch the royal children. That day was the opening ceremony, so there were many traditional events taking place. One of them featured the royal children going up on stage to show off. Once they were on the stage, every royal child had to properly announce themselves to the rest of the Extreme King. Of course, the introduction was nothing special. You just had to declare your name and title. If you added flair to the introductions, though, that was one way to stand out and make yourself memorable. Because of this, all the royal children would be utilizing their creativity to try to attract the attention of the audience. After all, the entire Geno universe was divided into ranks of one sort or another, and this was truer than ever when it came to the hierarchy of the Extreme King. The elites were those who were known and obeyed, and so the royal children wouldn't miss out on this opportunity to make an impression. After the opening ceremony, it was time for the royal children to show off. The first that came out on stage was the Crown Prince, Bai Wanjie. Bai Wanjie was the Crown Prince, but he was only half deified. He wasn't one of the two deified royals who were attending. The curtains of the stage pulled back, revealing Bai Wanjie. He was clad in golden armor, and his gold king area covered the whole of the Extreme King's plaza. He was shining so brightly, like a gold warrior walking down a gold path. My name is Bai Wanjie. I am the Crown Prince. Bai Wanjie's introduction was a simple one, and then he departed the platform of the Extreme King. After Bai Wanjie left, a sword light appeared above, tearing through the sky. The sword light was blindingly bright, and it made people's skin feel cold. It seemed to exert pressure on them from above. All the princes and princesses came out, and because each one of them was impressive, none of them were very surprising. Han Sen looked closer and sighed. There were many elites in the Extreme King. Many of those royal children could wipe out a lower race. The crowd was mostly focused on the two deified children. One of them was a prince, whereas the other one was a princess. After those two, the crowd was probably most interested in Bai Ling Shuang. She was widely considered to be the prettiest woman of the Extreme King. But in a discussion of beauty, Han Sen would have leaned toward Bai Wei. She was just as striking as Bai Ling Shuang. In truth, all of the royal children looked special, but Bai Ling Shuang was simply stronger and had more of a reputation. Soon, it was Han Sen's, Prince 16's, time to show off. Han Sen, when he heard his name get called, had to get up and go to the door that led out onto the stage. Many nobles, commoners, and even deified elites were interested in seeing Bai Yi, known as Prince 16. After all, his two most recent accomplishments were amazing, if completely unexpected. Claiming the Alpha statue and obtaining the protection of thousands of King Geese. Either of these acts would have made Bai Yi's name a very famous one. Because of this, people watched Bai Yi expectantly. They were more focused on him than on the two deified children. After all, the deified royal children were there every year. But Bai Yi had been only a cliff note in the past, and his sudden rise had gotten people curious. Under the eyes of all, Han Sen slowly walked through the door. He hadn't activated an overwhelming king area, and he wasn't producing any knife lights or sword lights. Han Sen, wearing a simple green robe, quietly walked to the center of the Extreme King's stage. Bai Yi, Extreme King's 16th prince. The number one in this exam. After saying this, Han Sen turned around and exited the stage. Blurg. Prince 19, who had just taken a swig of tea, spat it out. His eyes opened wide as he watched Han Sen step down from the Extreme King stage. The plaza was deathly quiet. No one seemed to know how to react. Old 16 is getting crazier and crazier. Bai Tsunglong had a wry smile. Every time I think I have a handle on him, this guy does something even more insane. Bai Ling Shuang tried to keep her face expressionless as she wondered if she had signed her own death sentence by making an alliance with Bai Yi. Haha, I like this introduction. It's aggressive. I have seen so many of the royal children's introductions, but this one has to be the strongest of the lot. Strong? That was stupid. Even if he is a match for most of his siblings, there are 2 deified royal children here. How can he predict he will reach first place? That was pretty dumb, but I liked it. This Prince 16 is very interesting. The whole of King's Kingdom was in shock. They were all intently discussing Prince 16 Bai Yi and his controversial introduction. Even King Bai, his wife, Ancient Abyss, and the other officials were all looking at Han Sen. Han Sen acted as if nothing had happened. He returned to his seat. The impact of Han Sen's display continued to swell. Prince 16's introduction didn't possess any shocking sky power or flashy techniques, but his words were like a rock falling into a lake. The splash and ripples were felt across every corner of King's Kingdom. Everyone knew Prince 16 Bai Yi had been the catalyst for 2 massive events in their history, and so his reputation had become substantial. Most people still believed that his words were an amusing mistake, or maybe even a straight-up joke. No one actually thought Bai Yi could do what he claimed. Most people's expectations for the results of the exam hadn't changed, though. The first and second spots were presumably going to be secured by the 2 deified royal children. It was almost a default assumption. Prince 16, who only had a 1-tier area, wouldn't be able to create many waves. No matter how well he performed, he was just there to add more fun action for the spectators to watch. Nothing more, nothing less. But they were wrong. They had been wrong since the very beginning. Han Sen was prepared to fight. Perhaps he wouldn't take first place, but he at least hoped to reach the top 3. Plus, Han Sen had more than a first-tier area. His original Water King body was a mutant xenogeneic gene that he had refined. Ordinarily, it couldn't have grown beyond the power it possessed when Han Sen first claimed it. It was first tier when he got it, and first tier it would remain. In the intervening time, however, Han Sen had gotten the ancient god origin. With that miraculous water power, the original Water King body was able to level up to a second-tier area. The ancient god origin is quite special. No wonder why so many elites wanted it. If my original Water King body can keep leveling up, that would be excellent, Han Sen mused as he played with the ancient god origin. A smile spread across his lips at the thought. But Han Sen wondered about his relationship with ancient water god. Han Sen had thought that he had gravely insulted ancient water god, but when the powerful being died, he sought Han Sen out and gave him the ancient god origin. It was very confusing. The higher tier a king reached, the stronger they would become. Once he reached the 9th tier, his king area would reset to tier 1 again, and he would become half-deified. Although the jump in power wasn't as impressive as becoming deified, half-deified elites had several multiples of the power of a 9th tier king. That was why they were considered half-deified. Han Sen didn't expect his original Water King body to reach the deified level. He would be satisfied if he was able to use the support of the ancient god origin to become half-deified. But despite employing many different methods, Han Sen hadn't been able to move his ancient god origin. He couldn't eat it, and neither could he drain power from it. At most, he could begin to meld the original Water King body into the ancient god origin. He fed the powers of the original Water King body into the ancient god origin, and they began to exist as one. The ancient god origin's power wasn't something that Han Sen could access freely, but the secondary effect it was having on his original Water King body was undeniable. The exams were about to start. The first day was used to transport all of the royal children to Rotbone Mountain. The children gathered at the bottom of the mountain, and they stared up at the loft peak above them, thrusting into the sky like a spear. They felt so small in comparison. Rotbone Mountain was like a pillar pointing to the heavens. Only its foothills were visible, as the peak was high above the clouds. A single rocky staircase would lead them all the way up to that semi-transparent peak. While they waited for the command that would tell them to start their hike, Bai Ling Shuang slowly moved closer to Han Sen. She looked at him, but she didn't say anything to him. 90% of Rot Bone Mountain's trail was made of stone. All of King's Kingdom's civilians and nobles could see this. Only the path above the clouds, the one that led to the peak, couldn't be seen. Even deified elites couldn't look through the clouds and see what resided there. Bai Ling Shuang couldn't let everyone know that Han Sen was helping her out. If she allowed that, all of the extreme king would start laughing at her. So, she would walk 90% of the path alone. Near the end, when she reached the trickier path, she was willing to ask Han Sen for help. The last path was the most difficult path on Rot Bone Mountain. Bai Ling Shuang wasn't confident that she could reach the end of that path. After a loud noise, 100 royal children approached the stone staircase. They looked like horses as they stampeded up. Either that, or some experienced hiking team. The children stretched into a long line that inched its way up the mountain. Leading the group was the Crown Prince Bai Weijia. No one fought for the path ahead of him. He was the Crown Prince, and he was in the front. Behind the Crown Prince were the deified Prince 4 and Princess 2. They walked together, side by side. Then, there were some half-deified royal children following directly behind, including Bai Ling Shuang and Bai Canglong. After them came the king-class royal children like Han Sen. Han Sen looked around. He didn't see Bai Wuchang. It looked like the man wasn't taking part in the exam. Bai Qingxia walked next to Han Sen and quietly said, "Brother 16, let's go." "Sure." Han Sen nodded, and he walked up the stone stairs alongside Bai Qingxia. In the back of the group, a pair of pretty eyes were locked on the back of Han Sen's head. Those eyes belonged to Bai Wei. Han Sen thought Rot Bone Mountain would be difficult to ascend. Otherwise, Bai Ling Shuang wouldn't have been willing to give up so many king-class xenogeneic genes for his help. But after Han Sen walked for a while, he noticed that Rot Bone Mountain didn't seem as hard as he had expected. Aside from the air restriction that kept them from using flying powers, everything seemed normal. But when Han Sen tried to speed up, things changed immediately. He had been walking easily up the path, but now a force pushed heavily against him, crippling his speed. It was like he was trying to run through water. The faster he went, the more resistance he felt. The force resisting him seemed inexhaustible, and Han Sen had no option but to slow down. When he slowed down, the resistance lessened. He was almost unable to feel it any longer. Now I understand why everyone is walking so slowly. I didn't realize this Rot Bone Mountain was so amazing, Han Sen thought to himself. Brother 16, our fight in King's Kingdom isn't done yet. When we fight on the Extreme King's stage, let us finally find out which one of us will win, Bai Qingxia said as he walked beside Han Sen. Didn't you lose the last time?
Han Sen asked, blinking.
Bai Qingxia smiled. I lost with the Kingese, but the fight didn't see a victor crowned. Hatred times 10. I have more than just a few tears now. Han Sen gave the man a surprised glance. How many tears do you have? 9 tears. I only need 1 more to reach times 10, but my body is only king class with 2 tears. I cannot break through the last tier. Bai Qingxia wasn't trying to hide anything, so he answered Han Sen's question plainly.
Avsom, Han Sen complimented him.
And Han Sen meant what he said. Han Sen had researched hatred times 10 after their battle, and it was indeed an amazing skill. Very few people could learn it. Times 1 required a first-tier king area, so to practice times 9, you would need a 9th-tier area. All the royal children made their ascent at a speed that was neither slow nor fast. The Crown Prince Bai Weijia was leading the way, but their formation began to change once they reached the halfway point. At the middle point of the mountain staircase, there was a stone tablet. Upon it was inscribed, "Travel half the mountain, thinking like a sword." Han Sen didn't know what it meant, but once they passed by the tablet, everyone started to speed up. Prince 4 and Princess 2 went past the Crown Prince Bai Weijia. Other royal children started to pull away, as well. The group began to spread out into ragged clumps of hikers, so it wasn't as tidy as it had been before the halfway point. The King's Kingdom nobles that had been watching half-heartedly now looked wide awake. They paid attention to the 2 deified royal children, of course, but many of them were just as focused on Han Sen. After all, Han Sen had sounded very cocky in the opening ceremony the day before. If he didn't perform well now, it would become an embarrassing joke. Brother 16, let us see who can reach the top of the mountain faster. Bai Qingxia moved his feet faster and ran up the mountain like a sharp sword. Han Sen agreed to the competition, and he walked a bit faster as well. Heavy resistance pushed against him. Han Sen still didn't understand, though. Earlier, they had all been hiking easily up the mountain. Why were they now forcing themselves to exhaust so much energy to go faster? They hadn't reached the hardest section of the path, which meant they couldn't be performing at their best. Regardless of how ridiculous it might seem, since everyone else was speeding up, Han Sen couldn't allow himself to be left behind. He had to take this chance. Otherwise, the boasting he had done during the opening ceremony would be for nothing. Han Sen cast his water area power, trying to break the resistance coming against him and make it easier to move forward. But the further he went, the more resistance piled on. He had spent a lot of energy already, and he couldn't really accelerate beyond his current speed. If this continued, he wouldn't be able to catch up with Prince 4 and Princess 2 up ahead. He might even be left behind by the other half-deified royal children. Judging from the powers they used, those half-deified royal children were much stronger than second-tier kings. Han Sen couldn't keep up with them using raw strength alone. Han Sen thought for a moment and then released his king area. He let the waterfall-like resistance land atop him. When that power washed over him, the Kingese in his body flashed gold and surged through Han Sen's blood. Under the buffs of the Kingese, Han Sen felt the resistance get lighter. Although it was still there, it was substantially decreased. If that resistance had previously been like a large river, it was now like a small stream. It ran no higher than Han Sen's ankles, and it was only a trifling problem. Han Sen didn't say anything, though. Calling on the power of the Gold Kingese inside him, he rushed forward against the competition. All of a sudden, he was leaving Bai Qingxia in the dust. The princes and princesses ahead were working so hard, but they were suddenly distracted by a stampede of frantic footsteps coming up behind them. The sound was so startling that they looked over their shoulders for the source. There, they saw Han Sen glowing with gold light, rushing madly forward. He blew right past them. Comparing Han Sen to the rest of them was like comparing a sports car to a lawnmower. The royal children in the back stared at that rapidly disappearing shadow in disbelief. They were frozen. They almost forgot that they themselves had to keep moving. No one had seen anyone run up the rot bone path like that before. Even deified elites struggled against the resistance of that trail. No one should have been able to reach max speed and actually sprint up the mountain. But Han Sen ran like he was uninhibited. His legs pounded like a wild horse breaking free from his reins. Here. Prince 16 is going to explode. Holy **T. He's so strong. Is that the protection of all those Kingese? It looks like they work against the powers of Rot Bone Mountain. The Rot Bone powers can't restrict him. At that speed, if he can keep going, maybe he really can overtake the two deifieds ahead and claim first place. He only got lucky. That isn't his real power on display. Even if he manages to run all the way to the top, he will only be winning first place in this race. The exams have many more trials and tasks for them. He can't rely solely on luck. Plus, who knows if he can even keep up this speed. The section of the trail above the clouds is the most important part. Everyone could see Han Sen running forward. He skipped by many royal children, and they looked excited. When Han Sen caught up to Bai Ling Shuang, she looked shocked as well. She knew the Kingese would reflect the power of Rot Bone Mountain. Usually, people with the Kingese symbols AO and Gu had an easier time. For some reason, less resistance held them back. But even the symbols AO and Gu shouldn't have been able to obliterate the mountain's restrictive power like Han Sen's Kingese symbols were. The symbols were only supposed to cause a minor reduction in the resistance. It looks like more symbols than just AO and Gu are useful in the hike up Rot Bone Mountain. Other Kingese symbols have also been activated, but I guess no one has had them before, so there was no way we could have known, Bai Ling Shuang thought to herself. She now had a bit more confidence that she could take advantage of Han Sen's power to reach Rot Bone Mountain's peak. This might have been a favorable turn of events for Bai Ling Shuang, but as she watched Han Sen's sprinting shadow, she couldn't help but feel a bit jealous. Why was he the one who received the protection of thousands of kingis? If I had gotten the protection of 1,000 kingis, perhaps I would have ended up as our new ruler. He passed him. He passed him, too. He's caught up with the crown prince. The audience was excited. Han Sen's body was gleaming with a golden light. He sprinted so fast that he went right past the crown prince. He was quickly gaining on Prince 4 and Princess 2. Prince 4 and Princess 2 felt the pressure coming from behind them. They turned around to have a look, and there, they saw Han Sen coming towards them. He was carried forward by a graceful golden light. They frowned and accelerated as much as they could. Han Sen wanted to close the distance between them, but running wasn't as easy as it had been previously. Although he didn't have as much resistance to compete with, the force pressing against him hadn't vanished entirely. He still had to suffer some resistance, and so he couldn't go at max speed. The onlookers were frozen. 3 royal children were running really fast towards the peak, and a big gap had appeared between them and the others. Deified elites are so strong. Han Sen couldn't catch up with Prince 4 and Princess 2. The 3 of them entered the final part of the trail, vanishing behind the cloud cover. No one would be able to watch them anymore. Prince 4 passed into the clouded trail first, so the deified elites still have a strength advantage. The protection of 1,000 kingis wasn't enough. Someone sighed. Who will be the winner? King Bai, his queen, and the teacher stared at Rotbone Mountain's peak with fervent interest. The rocky surface of the mountain trail had been replaced with a translucent substance as the trail passed into the clouds. Han Sen's body was shrouded in the thin layers of mist. He felt as if the dimensions of space were distorting around him. The feeling was very gentle, though, and it was brief, disappearing in a second.
Han Senes kingesessioner.
The climb to the peak was long and tiring, and the stairs wrapped back and forth up the mountain like a massive centipede. Han Sen saw Prince 4 and Princess 2 trying to fight their way up the stairs. They kept running on the same few steps, not going any higher. Han Sen ran toward the peak, and he ascended with no problem. He followed the stone steps that led up to the peak. Prince 4 and Princess 2 were still scrambling crazily against the stairs, like a hamster on its wheel. It looks the kingis have kept me from being trapped by this weird dimension. Han Sen wasn't in the mood to watch the deified royal children flail, so he focused his efforts on heading for the peak. The mountaintop was very wide, and it had to be as large as a soccer pitch. Most of the area was flat, too. One spot stood out on the mountaintop, however. There was a small knoll atop the peak. That knoll was no more than 100 meters tall. It looked as sharp as a sword, and it pointed into the sky. 5 words were carved deep into its side. They said, "Pride and bones are made." Looking at those 5 words gave people goosebumps. It was like there were 1,000 sword heirs there, and they'd rip you to pieces in less than a second. A powerful sword mind. Han Sen lurched in surprise when he read the 5 words. Han Sen's sword skills weren't bad. Although he didn't focus much on practicing with a blade, his sword mind was almost as good as a deified elite's. But before those 5 words, Han Sen's sword mind was crushed. He couldn't bring himself back to his senses. It was like he was shaking. Some suppressive force seemed to press down on him from above. I'm afraid that anyone who could carve those 5 words must have been incredibly skilled with the sword. This would have required an unbelievable level of talent. Who left those 5 words? There have been many great swordsmen scattered across the Extreme King's history, and many of the Extreme King's rulers were swordsmen. Even many commoners of the Extreme King are deified swordsmen. It's impossible to guess who might have done something like this. Han Sen paused before going on to think, but I'm afraid that in order to possess a sword mind like this, a swordsman must have surpassed the deified level. It has to be from one of the most famous swordsman kings. But I don't know them, so I don't know which king left behind this sword mind. Han Sen looked away from the text and glanced around the mountaintop. Aside from the knoll, there was nothing else on the peak. Bai Ling Shuang's mentioned that there was something to be gained by reaching this peak. Was she referring to this knoll and its carving? But if so, what could the benefit actually be? Is this entire knoll a treasure in itself? It doesn't look like it. The reward Bai Ling Shuang mentioned must have been the sword mind itself. Han Sen again read the 5 words, "Pride and bones are made." The sword mind was very powerful. Just looking at it was frightening. The sight of it would make a normal person feel sick. Comparing a normal sword mine to this monstrosity was like comparing a stone and a moon. They were two completely different things. Even with Han Sen's tough will, he was having trouble keeping his emotions in check before that sword mine. But his sword mind was very tough, and he wouldn't be shaken easily. He stood there and watched the 5 words intently. For some reason, though, Han Sen felt like he was trying to scratch an itch that he couldn't quite reach. He couldn't grasp the real meaning of the sword mind. As Han Sen stared at the knoll, he heard a flurry of footsteps come up the staircase behind him. He glanced back and saw Prince Four running up the steps. Prince Four, seeing that Han Sen was already at the peak, frowned and said nothing. "Greetings, Prince Four." Han Sen bowed. Prince Four glared at him and remained silent. He headed toward the knoll. When he reached the 5 words, he focused on them and began to ignore Han Sen completely. Han Sen scratched his nose. If someone wanted to ignore him, he wasn't going to push himself on them. Prince Four just stood there, perfectly still, until Princess Two arrived. When she saw Han Sen and Prince Four already there, she looked fairly upset. She didn't mind that Prince Four had been faster than her, but Han Sen had also reached the top much more quickly than she had. This made her sad. But she was deified, after all. Her sadness quickly faded. Princess Two walked over to the knoll and turned her attention to the 5 words, just like Prince Four had. She also ignored Han Sen. The 2 deified children reached out with their senses to feel the sword mind. When Han Sen detected their attempts, it confirmed that the benefit of the mountaintop had to lie in these 5 words. And ultimately, that disappointed him. That sword mind was very powerful, but Han Sen did not focus on swords as his primary form of attack. If Six Paths Emperor had been there, perhaps he would have appreciated this boon far more. Han Sen stayed there, looking at the words for a while, but he did not learn anything. Since he was there already, Han Sen wasn't going to give up an opportunity to gain more power. He decided to stay. After a while, Han Sen thought about Bai Ling Shuang. The timing seemed about right, so he headed back down the mountain. Prince Four and Princess Two saw Han Sen turn around and go back. They were confused when he left, but they ignored him. They turned their attention back to the words to learn whatever they could from the sword mind. Han Sen walked back down the translucent road. Many royal princes and princesses were walking up and up without actually making any progress. Bai Ling Shuang was similarly frozen in place. The royal children ran like headless chickens, but none of them were moving an inch forward. The twisted dimension affected them too much, and they couldn't find a way to proceed. Bai Ling Shuang was furious. She had been struggling fruitlessly for so long. Her body was affected by the distorted dimension's power. She couldn't move, and she felt so very heavy. She had become enraged when Han Sen passed her by. That A*** hole. If he took my items and didn't hold up his end of the bargain, I'm going to skin him alive. Bai Ling Shuang's body felt very heavy. She could barely move. With every step she took, it felt like she was shouldering the weight of an entire mountain. She was sweating, and her clothes had long since become soaked. The longer someone stayed on that translucent path, the more they would be affected by the twisted dimension. You little **T. I am going to kill him. Bai Ling Shuang started to fall toward the ground. She hated him. Sister Tin, am I too late? An arm appeared and caught Bai Ling Shuang, stopping her from hitting the ground. Bai Ling Shuang raised her head and saw Han Sen smiling at her. She bit her lip and said, "Why are you back here?" When Bai Ling Shuang heard Han Sen claim that the road had been difficult for him, she rolled her eyes. She had seen Han Sen running casually up the mountain, making the ascent without breaking the smallest sweat. He wasn't gasping or red in the face. It looked as if the trek hadn't even been much of a bother. Still, Bai Ling Shuang didn't say a word. Han Sen was carrying her up the mountain. From her perspective, it looked like Han Sen was actually leaving the staircase, walking away from the mountain and out into the open air. In reality, they were still going up the staircase. Bai Ling Shuang only thought they were walking over open air because of the distortions within the dimension. As he walked, Han Sen noticed Bai Wei. She was stumbling forward like the other royal children, making no progress. Because she had gotten there quite late, The repressive power hadn't acted on her nearly as strongly as it had the others. The fact that she could walk faster than the other children wasn't helping, though, because she couldn't find the path. Continuing to walk forward would be pointless. This girl isn't bad, and she did try to save Bauer. Her heart is in the right place.
Han Sen sighed.
He secretly cast his Dongxian aura and fired some power in her direction. Bai Wei was struggling to walk forward, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape that seemingly infinite staircase. She had gotten really flustered. Suddenly, Bai Wei felt a wave of power roll across the stairs. It spread gently around her. A strange feeling passed through Bai Wei's heart. The dimensional twists of the translucent trail hid the royal children from each other. Even if two people walked right beside each other, they wouldn't see one another. Even if they were touching each other, it wouldn't make a difference. Now, a trickle of power was flowing tantalizingly down the stairs before Bai Wei. Bai Wei's heart jumped, and she followed that strange power. The power was disappearing quickly as she chased after it. She pushed against the distortions in the dimension, trying to keep her eyes on that guiding trickle of energy. As she walked, Bai Wei noticed that the stairs were about to vanish beneath her. The power led away from the staircase entirely and out into the sky. She had to move quickly to keep up with her guide. So Bai Wei gritted her teeth and walked out without hesitation. Her body floated away from the mountain into open air. She didn't fall, though. Her feet met with something, and she kept walking forward. Bai Wei grinned. There had been no other path to follow, so she had chased that power. If she stepped in the wrong place, she would fall all the way back down the mountain. On Rot Bone Mountain, even deified elites couldn't fly well. Bai Wei was just a duke. Bai Wei had to keep up with the guiding power in order to stay on the correct path. She kept chasing that power, running as she went. Han Sen carried Bai Ling swung all the way to the top. Once there, he found that a mixture of princes and princesses had also made it to the peak. Bai Qingxia was there, too. He was surprised to see Han Sen come up alongside Bai Ling Shuang. Han Sen had already let go of Bai Ling Shuang, though. Aside from Prince 4 and Princess 2, no one knew that Han Sen had carried Bai Ling Shuang up to the peak. It looks like I win, Bai Qingxia said. As he stared at Han Senator, he thought Han Sen had just reached the top. The other princes and princesses thought so, too. After all, the translucent trail couldn't be ascended through pure speed. It wasn't strange to think that Han Sen had only just arrived. Bai Ling Shuang was sweating, but when she saw the 5 words inscribed in the knoll, she suddenly felt wide awake. A rush of joy poured through her. She didn't possess the Kingese Ao or Gu, so making her way up the translucent trail would have been too difficult for her. Bai Qingxia had the word Ao, though, so it was much easier for him to reach the top. Physical strength didn't matter much in this contest. Is this the proud bone sword mine from Mad Sword? Bai Ling Shuang looked at the 5 words, pride and bones are made. She looked so happy as she mumbled to herself. Han Sen was confused. He had never heard of a king called Mad Sword. There were some god swords and even holy swords, but a title like Mad Sword didn't seem worthy of a king. Bai Qingxia picked up where Bai Ling Shuang had left off. Mad Sword was born crippled. He didn't have a king body, and so he was bullied severely. But in the end, he used his sword to become deified. He might not have had a king body, but he prevailed over many in the extreme king. Even deified elites with powerful king bodies lost to his sword. He wasn't a ruler of our people, but he could be considered a king without a crown amongst the extreme king. Our race has had many swordsmen in its time, but none are as worthy of respect as Mad Sword. Han Sen receded into thought. I didn't know the extreme king had someone that strong amongst them. How come I have never heard of it until now? Bai Qingxia had only just finished when a princess, who wasn't too far away, looked over at him with disdain. Mad Sword's power matters little. No glorification can rinse away the dirt. He is not worthy of admiration. Bai Qingxia and Bai Ling Shuang frowned at the princess. After seeing their faces, she turned away. They avoided all contact with her. Han Sen wasn't interested in that princess either. He wanted to know Mad Sword's story. Clearly, Mad Sword must have been very different from the majority of the extreme king. Even his title sounded rather taboo amongst them. If Han Sen had actually been Bai Yi, he would have known about Mad Sword. He wasn't by E, though, and so he couldn't simply ask. While they were talking, someone else approached. It was Bai Wei. She was dripping with sweat after finally reaching the top. Her body was shivering, and she could barely stand. She was obviously fighting to hold herself together. Although Han Sen had sent power to guide her, she was too weak. Even if she knew the way, reaching the peak as a duke was monumentally difficult. Many of the royal children looked stunned when they saw Bai Wei at the top. In the long history of the Extreme King, only a few dukes had ever made it this far. Bai Wei looked at the princes and princesses. She wanted to know who left behind the power that guided her up, but she was unable to learn anything. No one there was using that power. When she looked at Han Sen, though, her mood turned to foul anger. She snarled slightly as she stared at him. She was still bitter about Bai Yi's consumption of Han Senator. She didn't think that power belonged to him. Bai Wei looked around, but she still couldn't tell which of them had left the power for her. She was really grateful, though, and she went to the knoll to have a look at the 5 words inscribed there. Bai Ling Shuang and the others were all in similar shape. Hiking was a test. Mad Sword's proud bone sword mind was very beneficial. Even if they weren't fans of the man himself, they still slavered over his sword mind. Han Sen found a seat. He wanted to watch the sword mind from the most comfortable position, but there was little for him to do other than that. Everyone had a unique personality. Even if 2 people practiced the same sword skills, their sword minds would develop based on their individualities. Despite starting from the same base, the resulting sword minds might be very different. Han Sen had a very different personality from the man who had created the proud bone sword mind. Because they were so completely different, there was an extreme gap between their sword minds. Han Sen was having a very hard time trying to understand the proud bone sword mind. Both the name Mad Sword and Proud Bone were very representative of the man's character. He had been a very proud and very wild person. He approached problems and came up with solutions in a very different manner than Han Sen. Han Sen's sword mind was based on tenacity. No matter what endeavor Han Sen undertook, whether it was gravely important or exceedingly trivial, he finished what he started. His determination carried him continually forward, but sometimes he was so focused on his goals that he could miss out on the views along the way. As long as Han Sen could reach his goal, he was willing to follow whichever path would get him there in the end. This aspect of his character sometimes made him seem lackadaisical and uncaring. He seemed to change plans easily, as if he was okay with everything and nothing really mattered to him. But in reality, Han Sen never shifted from his true purpose. He was just willing to adapt his plans as many times as necessary in order to achieve that purpose. Han Sen, who seemed like such a casual individual, was actually more stubborn than most. But the things he stubbornly pursued were so far in the future that other people couldn't see them. That was why others thought he showed little concern over the things around him. Mad Sword was different. Mad Sword wasn't obsessed with an end goal. He cared more about the experience of the journey itself. Ironically, though, he was the most unique and noticeable thing on most of the roads he traveled. Born pretty to die pretty. That was what Mad Sword was looking for. 2 different personalities and 2 different lives. Neither of them was right or wrong. They were just the decisions made by separate people. If Han Sen wanted to learn Mad Sword's proud bone sword mind, he would have to give up his own faith and purpose to properly understand the faith that Mad Sword placed in his own beliefs. Han Sen could do that, but he didn't want to. Despite this massive disconnect between them, Han Sen still wanted to gain something from the sword mind. It would be much harder for him than for others, who could simply accept Mad Sword's sword mind for what it was. Half the day had passed by this point, and the sword minds of some of the royal children were starting to reflect the 5 words, pride and bones are made. They had been able to achieve a lot. The most obvious was Bai Ling Shuang. Her sword mind was connecting with the carved script. The sword mind was melding into her body, and with its power, it also brought a certain arrogance. Han Sen was surprised. Bai Ling Shuang was talented, but she definitely wasn't the best of the royal children who had made it to the top of the mountain. But since she had achieved so much already, her personality was a fine match for the proud bone sword mind. It looks like I have wasted my time here.
Han Sen sighed.
He had been unable to tap into the proud bone sword mind. It was like when a lazy person failed to understand a workaholic. Their thoughts didn't operate on the same wavelength. They were so different that they could never be the same. In the end, Han Sen gave up trying to learn the proud bone sword mind. No matter how strong it was, it didn't match his own personality. Han Sen had to take Bai Ling Shuang back down, though. Waiting around for her was boring, and he quickly grew uncomfortable as he sat around doing nothing. So, he started playing with his jade gourd. He also summoned his water fairy. Han Sen intended to have the water fairy give him a massage, so he could wait for Bai Ling Shuang in a more comfortable fashion until it was time to leave. Once they reached the bottom, he could lay claim to the other 50 king-class genes he had been promised. But when the water fairy emerged from the gourd, she looked straight at the carved words. She stood on the spot, completely unmoving. Just as Han Sen noticed her strange behavior, the water fairy's body began to change. The liquid within his translucent form swirled slowly, shifting in almost imperceptible ways. Most of the changes that took place in the water fairy's appearance were minute, but when he looked at her again, she seemed like a completely different person. Even her powers had altered radically. The water fairy had originally been as soft as water. She could listen to someone's complaints without becoming perturbed, just like a maid. But after these small changes, the water fairy looked as cold as ice. Her whole body was like a sharp and powerful sword. Han Sen looked at the water fairy, and he thought her power actually seemed rather familiar. Pride and bones are made, Han Sen murmured to himself. He had realized why she now looked so familiar. It was because the water fairy's new power reminded him of the 5 words carved into the knoll. The proud bone sword mind seemed to radiate from her form. What is going on? Han Sen asked in pleased astonishment. In all the time that had passed since he first discovered the water fairy, Han Sen hadn't figured out what the water fairy could do. He usually used her as a maid, but now, she seemed to possess a power that was beyond his imagination. The water fairy's changes continued. The less obvious the changes became, the more her powers altered. And not long after, when Han Sen looked at the water fairy, she had become a personification of the words, "Pride and bones are made." She looked exactly like the real proud bone sword mind. It was remarkable. Fortunately, Han Sen was sitting behind most of the royal children, and they were too focused on learning the sword mind to pay attention to him. Anyway, if any of them had seen the water fairy undergoing those changes, they would have been astounded. The sword mind was something that could only be felt, not embodied. It wasn't like a geno art or some piece of scientific knowledge that could be written down as words. It couldn't even be drawn or photographed. It was a sensation that had to be felt inside oneself. It couldn't be copied with any form of tool. But the water fairy somehow did the impossible. She copied the words to embody the proud bone sword mind. If a deified elite had seen what she did, they would have reacted the same way that Han Sen was. A while later, the changes within the water fairy finished. Her power and sword mind had completely transformed into the proud bone sword mind. "It is perfect. Perfect," Han Sen complimented. The water fairy had copied that power like a cheater. Han Sen had never heard of any other treasure being able to do something like this. As Han Sen thought about how lucky he was to have the jade gourd and water fairy, the water fairy suddenly moved over to Han Senator. She placed her hands on Han Sen's chest and made her water body suddenly blend into his own. What is this? Han Sen wondered. Then, a foreign sword mind suddenly flowed into his body. He recognized it instantly. It was the proud bone sword mind. Han Sen realized what had just happened. The water fairy wasn't just copying the mind. She could take that mind and gift it to the master of the jade gourd. Then, the jade gourd master could feel the sword mind in his own body. The sword mind might have been incompatible with him, but now it was deep within his mind, under his control. Rather than simply seeing the foreign sword mind, now he could experience every facet of it. There was no better way to learn than experience. It was better to travel than it was to study. The water fairy could take an abstract idea and make it real and tangible. A sword mind was oozing from Han Sen's body, but that wasn't strange. Everyone on top of the mountain was studying the proud bone sword mind, so all the royal children were leaking the power of their sword minds to some degree. But Han Sen's sword mind was different. He wasn't learning a sword mind. Instead, he had copied the proud bone sword mind directly and unleashed it on himself. that sword mind swept out of him, brushing across everything on the top of the mountain. It settled over the other royal children like a blanket, suppressing their sword minds. Even the sword minds of the deified Prince 4 and Princess 2 began to buckle under the incredible pressure exerted by Han Sen's sword mind. Out of all the sword minds currently active on the top of Rot Bone Mountain, only Han Sen's was connected with the 5 words, "Pride and bones are made." Han Sen's mind and the power of the words clashed against each other like two ancient swords engaged in a battle, and the other sword minds on the mountaintop faded into the background by comparison. How? The faces of the royal children grew pale. Even Prince 4 and Princess 2 seemed stunned by what they were witnessing. They turned to look behind them at Han Sen in utter disbelief. Bai Ling Shuang opened her eyes wide as if she had just seen a ghost. Bai Wei nibbled her lips and did not say a word. Emotions flickered rapidly across her features. The sword mind coming out of Han Sen's body could go up against the powerful words engraved in the knoll. Not even deified elites could pull off a feat like this. Because Han Sen's sword mind had exploded with power, the sword mind of the 5 words rose pridefully against it. It whirled with power like a hurricane, storming through everything there was. Han Sen's sword mind had been copied from the words, "Pride and bones are made." Because the 2 powers were the same, they activated fully in one another's presence, like 2 magnets of the same polarity pushing against one another. It was like Han Sen was fighting his own mirror image. Luckily, in this case, the fight was mostly contained within the sword minds that were present. It wasn't really destructive, but even so, the group of royal children was involved. Their sword minds were severely suppressed by those 2 raging sword minds. The weaker ones had to shield their sword minds to keep them from being wholly destroyed. Blood began to trickle from the mouths and noses of the weaker royal children. Eventually, they had no choice but to abandon the mountain. They didn't want to get involved with that scary sword mind battle. The sword mind wouldn't really harm their bodies, but it could destroy their wills. If their wills were broken, then it would cause a great deal of harm to their future practices. 2 sword minds dominated the whole peak of Rot Bone Mountain. Han Sen was in the thick of the chaos, and he had earned some rewards. No matter how incompatible this sword mind was with his own, his body was making use of the Proud Bone sword mind. As he continued to fight the Proud Bone sword mind, he learned, "I wonder if the water fairy can copy a living creature's mind. If she can, I can learn any Geno art I want. All I need to do is learn the basic skill and find an elite that has mastered the Geno art. Then I can ask the water fairy to copy their minds, then send their teachings into my body so I can practice. If that works, it should be exactly what I've wanted. No, it should be a dozen times more than what I've wanted." Happiness spread through Han Sen as he considered the prospect. But as Han Sen was thinking about the possibilities for the future, he suddenly heard a catch noise. Perhaps the fight between sword minds had grown too intense, because the small knoll had suddenly cracked. The crack slowly spread down the sides of the knoll, and it looked as if the little knoll had been struck by lightning. The crack grew until the whole structure was split in half. It cut through the 5 words, "Pride and bones are made." The knoll split open, and both the 5 words and the sword mind they provided vanished. After all, the sword mind had been there since the words were first carved into the knoll. When the words disappeared, so too would the sword mind. Boom! When the knoll cracked open, a sword light emerged. It broke through the distorted dimensions of Rot Bone Mountain and ascended into the sky like a blade splitting through paper. A proud bone sword air. The royal children atop the peak stared into the sky, their jaws hanging slack. All of the Extreme King were looking at Rot Bone Mountain. They were waiting for the royal children to descend the mountain again. But before the royal children could return, a sword light shot up from the peak and headed into the sky. They were stunned by the sight, and they weren't too sure what was happening. The proud bone sword air. King Bai's face changed. He waved his hand, and an overwhelming power poured out of him and shaped itself into an unimaginably large hand. It was almost big enough to shield the entire system, and it swooped toward that sword light. Because the sword light had broken through Rot Bone Mountain's distorted dimension, those inside could now see out and vice versa. Han Sen saw a big hand coming down toward them. The planets were no more than specks of dust when compared to that hand. It was like that hand could grab and crush the stars themselves. The sword light was still rising, heading for that enormous hand. It didn't deviate from its course, and it showed no sign of backing down. When the sword light struck the hand, and the hand curled its fingers around the attack, grasping it firmly. The hand's power was terrifying, awe-inspiring to behold. The sword light tried to force its way forward, but it could no longer move. Pang! The big hand tightened, and the sword light exploded in a shower of fireworks. The shattered light became a meteor shower that swept across the skies of King's Kingdom. It rained across all the planets of King's Kingdom. The rain wasn't water, though. Each drop was made of glowing sword light. Han Sen watched the sword light rain come down, and he noticed that it was everywhere. When those sword lights hit the ground, they weren't destructive. The sword lights shattered whenever anything touched them. It was such a dreamy spectacle. The sword lights broke apart when they touched people's bodies, too. Han Sen reached out a hand to try to grab a sword light, but it shattered like dust when he touched it, leaving nothing behind. King Bai lowered his hand, retrieved his power, and frowned. He looked at the sword light rain, his emotions hidden beneath a calm mask. The sword light rain continued across King's Kingdom for a whole 7 days. Han Sen and the others, after they returned to the bottom of the mountain, were asked what happened. The royal princes and princesses explained what had happened, and Han Sen did too. But he said he only understood some of the proud bone sword mind. He didn't want to explain that he had gotten into a fight with the 5 words on the knoll. He said that the knoll suddenly exploded, and that was it. He didn't mention anything about the Jade Gourd or the Water Fairy, either. Despite what had happened, some people didn't believe Han Sen could practice a sword mind to the level they had witnessed. When asked, Han Sen activated the proud bone sword mind. Even King Bai was shocked to see it. Han Sen didn't understand what the sword light was, but King Bai didn't explain it to him. He just told Han Sen that he could return home. Bai was now very famous. He had managed to learn the proud bone sword mind to such an extreme level in a very short amount of time. Everyone in King's Kingdom knew the name Bai, and they knew that he was a genius. But Han Sen was annoyed by the fact that he had only borrowed the power of the Jade Gourd. He could only use a sword mind like that when the Water Fairy possessed him. If the Water Fairy wasn't there, his sword mind would return to its ordinary level. Still, it wasn't that bad. Drowning in that powerful sword mind could further Han Sen's personal development. Han Sen was very curious about that sword light rain. Although people said King Bai had destroyed the sword light, Han Sen didn't think the reality of what had happened was quite that simple. Han Sen summoned the Siren Virgin so that she could take a look at the sword light rain. He also told her about the sword light that had appeared atop Rot Bone Mountain's peak. He didn't reveal that he was the one who had destroyed the knoll atop that mountain, however. When the Siren Virgin heard what he had to say, she looked startled. She silently turned to observe the sword light rain. "Do you know what this sword light is?" Han Sen asked with a frown. The Siren Virgin had been silent for a long, thoughtful minute. Then she looked back at him and said, "Mad Sword." For a long time, even talking about him was considered taboo among the Extreme King. He wasn't one of the Extreme King's nobility, and he didn't even have a king body. But his sword skills were beyond talented. He was just a normal swordsman, and yet, he became deified. He beat countless elites of the Extreme King. "I know that," Han Sen said. "Have you wondered about why a scary elite like this was never really made famous outside of the Extreme King?" the Siren Virgin asked. "I have given that some thought, and I think it is pretty weird. It doesn't really make any sense. My best guess is that the Extreme King trapped him here. He was never allowed to go beyond the borders of the Extreme King's domain," Han Sen said. The Siren Virgin shook her head. "You have guessed half of it correctly. Mad Sword never left the Extreme King. He actually was famous among outside races, but they knew him by a different name." "You mean Mad Sword used an alias in his exploits across the universe? Why would he do such a thing?" Han Sen asked with curiosity. The Siren Virgin shook her head. "I don't know. I investigated Mad Sword, but I only learned that he did something that made the Extreme King despise him. Many people in the Extreme King severely dislike him. After that, The Siren Virgin looked at the sword light rain like she was looking out to sea. She said, "If I am correct, it's possible that Mad Sword isn't completely dead. This sword light rain might suggest that he may be reborn." "You mean Mad Sword was trapped in the pride and bones are made stone? That sword light was Mad Sword himself?" Han Sen asked, raising an eyebrow. "It was probably just his will. I bet King Bai has a pretty nasty headache right about now. If that guy is reborn, the Extreme King will descend into chaos." "That's good. The more chaos, the more benefits you and I can reap," the Siren Virgin said. She ended with a laugh. If Mad Sword only left his will behind, then he might have decided to escape the region entirely once he was freed. "That wouldn't shake up the Extreme King Society very much at all," Han Sen said, disagreeing with the Siren Virgin. The Siren Virgin shook her head. Why would he run? Right now, here in the realm of the Extreme King, the sword light is everywhere. All he needs to do is attach to some creature here and possess it. Any effort the Extreme King make to find him will probably turn out to be impossible. There is no need for him to run. Upon hearing the Siren Virgin say this, Han Sen felt his heart jump. After a long moment, he asked, "Might Mad Sword seek to choose me? There are so many people in the Extreme King. Mad Sword doesn't require someone talented, so there's no reason for him to go after a prince." "You think too much," the Siren Virgin said. Despite her reassurance, Han Sen did not feel safe. It made him worry quite a bit. Luckily, when the sword light rain stopped, nothing weird had occurred in Planet Water Zone. However, Han Sen was paranoid for the duration of the rain. Due to the sword light rain, the next part of the exam was delayed 7 days. The passion for the event had slowly withered away. Perhaps it was due to the sword light rain incident, but the Extreme King's supervisors weren't very focused on the exams. And although the sword light rain had stopped, the exams remained on pause. The whole atmosphere of King's Kingdom was tense. The realm was placed on lockdown, and even Han Sen's Planet Water Zone was investigated by a number of different departments. The workers might not have known what they were looking for, but Han Sen figured that the Extreme King's supervisor was still searching for Mad Sword's will. What a scary guy. He only had his will left, but even so, its reappearance has caused this much of a ruckus. "I could die a happy man if I was that influential," Han Sen sighed after sending away a few more officers. Han Sen didn't travel anywhere. He focused on leveling up his Dongxian Sutra. He wanted to get that to King class as soon as possible. Although Jade Skin and the Blood Pool Sutra were easier for him to level up, Han Sen still wanted the Dongxian Sutra to be leveled up first. Han Sen sensed that a crisis was near, and the Dongxian Sutra was the skill he was most familiar with. It was something he could rely on. The Dongxian Sutra's power was irreplaceable. No other Geno art could match its offensive capabilities. In a proper fight, Han Sen could fight without Jade Skin and the Blood Pool Sutra, and even the story of genes. Doing so never really affected Han Sen's fighting power. But without the Dongxian Sutra, Han Sen's fighting power was noticeably decreased. The other 3 Geno arts were plenty strong, but the Dongxian Sutra was the most compatible with who Han Sen was as a person. It matched his personality. That was the primary reason that Han Sen always fell back on the Dongxian Sutra. It was simply comfortable. A crisis was brewing, and he had promised aid to Ningyu as well. He needed to gain more power, and he needed to do so quickly. The most straightforward way to achieve this was to take the Dongxian Sutra to King class. Han Sen practiced in the training room for an entire month, using the Dongxian Sutra the entire time. His whole body felt like part of a machine. Yes, it was a machine. From Han Sen's point of view, the Dongxian body made the entire universe seem like one giant machine. Grass, forests, stone, water, bugs, fish. They were all gears inside this machine. Each cogwheel was a different size and shape, but they all fit together. They all connected to each other. When one cog spun, it spun the cog next to it. And that new one that spun would spin the next cog, and so on. Han Sen was just a single piece amidst an unfathomably vast machine. With the power of the Dongxian Sutra, however, Han Sen had a wider view of the cogs and how each one related to the others. Using the Geno art felt amazing. 2 objects in the real world might have no visible connection, but Han Sen could see the power that was transferred between them. The only thing Han Sen didn't know was exactly how he could affect those relationships. Han Sen understood that if he was to alter the power exchange of the cogs, he would require king area powers. Every king area affected the way the cogs were spun. A king area could make them go faster or slower, or even spin in reverse. All the rules of nearby cogwheels were affected, creating special area pockets. I failed again? Han Sen looked pale. His power buzzed feebly, and his life force was at a very low level. Han Sen had cast all the Dongxian Sutra power that he was able to. He used all his energy trying to push the cogwheel and get it moving, so he could open its area and ascend to king class. Getting the cog moving should not have been this difficult. Many dukes that were weaker than Han Sen reached king class with no trouble. Han Sen's fitness and power let him fight most king class elites, but when Han Sen cast his Dongxian Sutra, his own self-universe cogwheel would not move. Han Sen thought about the potential reasons for why that might be. The king area required its own universe cogwheel to spin within the universal machine. According to the theory, if he was powerful enough, he could move his own cogwheel to shift all the cogwheels that were connected. Han Sen was powerful. He was likely the only one of his kind as a duke. So, his self-universe cogwheel was bigger than that of any other duke. The other dukes had self-universe cogwheels that might only connect with one or two other cogwheels, but Han Sen's self-universe cogwheel might connect with hundreds or even thousands of universal cogwheels. The more he was connected to, the harder it was to get it moving. Clearly, Han Sen's power wasn't enough to push all those cogs at the same time. That was why it was so difficult for him to move up to king class. Han Sen decided to give up on his Dongxian Sutra and bring his jade skin up to king class instead, but he soon noticed that this self-universe cogwheel was too strong as well. It connected to too many universal cogwheels. So, leveling up jade skin to king class would be just as hard as ascending with the Dongxian Sutra. The scariest thing, however, was that the Dongxian Sutra could see the universal cogwheels. When Han Sen used jade skin instead, the cogwheels seemed blurry and indistinct. He couldn't really see them, which actually made things harder. The Dongxian Sutra. The Dongxian Sutra has the highest chance of letting me get my cogwheel spinning. Once I've ascended with the Dongxian Sutra, it will be easier with jade skin. But how do I push the Dongxian Sutra to get the cogwheels moving? Han Sen thought about it for a long time, but no ideas were coming to him. It seemed impossible. Being too strong had actually become a serious problem. Because his body was tied to 4 Geno Arts, getting just one of the Geno Arts to king class wasn't enough to push his self-universe cogwheel. Han Sen only had one body, so it was impossible for him to use all 4 Geno Arts to level up at the same time. It was a scary thought, but even the conflict of his power and blood pulse would be enough to annihilate his body. It is fortunate that I only have 4 Geno Arts. If I had more, I could never make it to king class. Not even the holy pills could make my self-universe cogwheel move. Han Sen tried to comfort himself. Using my own power will never work. I have to use some sort of external power. But if I level up to king class using an external power, a single accident or loss of control could cause something far worse than failure to happen. My whole body would be destroyed. All the time he had spent thinking hadn't brought Han Sen to a conclusion. I must find a reliable resource of power that is both stable and destructive. In that case, I may have to ask someone deified to help me. But what kind of deified elite would sacrifice something to help me? And who could I even trust? Han Sen wondered. He couldn't think of any reliable deified elites. Of all the deifieds he knew, Han Sen trusted the little red bird the most. But the little red bird's power was a little too volatile, and its ability to control its power wasn't very refined. It couldn't perform such delicate work. Out of the deifieds who had the necessary level of control over their power, Han Sen thought Isha would be the most reliable. It was the first name that popped into his head when he thought about who he trusted the most. Isha was actually his enemy, though. Even Han Sen was shocked to recall that little fact. But despite that regrettable fact, he couldn't think of any other deified that was as reliable as her. It is a shame Isha is still in Narrow Moon. She cannot be the one to help me. I cannot leave King's Kingdom, Han Sen thought with a wry smile. If I cannot ask for someone's help, then I will have to borrow someone's power. That will be the only way. Han Sen's eyes wavered with uncertainty. Han Sen was good with Yin-Yang Blast and similar techniques. If he could borrow some stable and strong powers, perhaps he would be able to push the self-universe cogwheel. But doing this was like dancing on the edge of a knife. Han Sen would be destroyed if things went south. Han Sen needed to use a power that was stronger than his own to push the self-universe cogwheel. He needed to maintain absolute, perfect control over a power that didn't even belong to him. A minor mistake would be enough to cause a grand tragedy. What a headache, Han Sen thought, rubbing his temples. He still couldn't come up with a solution to his woes, though. "My prince, Princess Tin by Ling Shuang wishes to see you," said Lily's voice from outside the door. "Why is she here?" Han Sen frowned. Because the Extreme King had been searching multiple planets for traces of Madsword, Han Sen hadn't collected the 50 King-class xenogeneic genes he was owed by Ling Shuang. There was no sense in drawing attention to their little deal. He hadn't expected her to come and visit him, though. When Han Sen entered the living room, he found Bai Ling Shuang there drinking tea. She looked very relaxed. "Princess Tin, why have you taken the time to come and visit me?" Han Sen asked casually, sitting down on the chair next to Bai Ling Shuang. "Because of the deal we struck. I have brought you the items we discussed." Bai Ling Shuang raised her hand, and the two maids behind her presented Han Sen with a very large box. "Brother 16, you may count them if you wish, but there are 50 King-class xenogeneic genes. No more and no less," Bai Ling Shuang said with a smile. "Sister Tin, you should have just told me. I would have gone and picked them up. You didn't have to come all the way here to personally deliver them." Han Sen laughed and opened the box. He counted 50 King-class xenogeneic genes. "I am here because I have another big proposition for you, brother." Bai Ling Shuang waved her hand, and all the maids dispersed. When he saw Bai Ling Shuang's gesture, Han Sen turned and indicated that Lily should depart, too. The hall emptied out, and only the two of them were left sitting in the room. "I have a reliable source who has confirmed that the exams will not be continuing this year. They will use the Rotbone Mountain ranking. Brother 16, you might be number 1. In addition to the deified xenogeneic treasure, you will be given permission to enter Destiny's Tower once. Do you plan to sell your admission ticket?" Bai Ling Shuang asked, her beautiful eyes staring directly at Han Sen. Han Sen wasn't interested in selling his ticket of admission to Destiny's Tower, which greatly disappointed Bai Ling Shuang. Luckily, she didn't push the subject any further. 2 days later, someone from the palace arrived to give Han Sen his exam rewards. The reward was a little different than Bai Ling Shuang had predicted, though. Han Sen received the pass that would grant him admission to Destiny's Tower, but he wasn't given the deified treasure Bai Ling Shuang had mentioned. After Han Sen considered the issue for a moment, he thought that he understood. Perhaps King Bai was still suspicious, so he withheld the deified treasure typically given to whoever came in first. Being given permission to enter Destiny's Tower is still a great reward. I'm excited to see if that Destiny's Tower is the same or different from mine. Han Sen had been curious about the Destiny's Tower of the Extreme King since he first learned that it existed. After he sent the officers away, Han Sen slid the pass into his pocket and went to visit Destiny's Tower. He wasn't personally in a rush, but he was afraid Fox Queen might learn that he had been given the pass. She would find him quickly, and she would ask him to steal something from the tower. No doubt. That would be way too risky. After going to Destiny's Tower, Han Sen understood why it was so difficult to gain permission to go there. The Extreme King didn't want many people to learn the secrets within Destiny's Tower, for one. But there was another reason. Opening Destiny's Tower required the strength of 4 deified elites. All 4 had to combine their strength in order to open the door enough for one person to pass through. Every time Destiny's Tower was opened, the 4 deifieds would end up exhausted. It would take them 2 to 3 months to recover, and it cost them a very rare and special material. Although Han Sen had received the permit allowing him to enter Destiny's Tower, he would have to register before he could use it. After Han Sen sorted out all the registration forms, he was told he would be allowed access in 17 days. He had to be there on time. If he was 1 second late, he would lose his permission to enter Destiny's Tower. Han Sen was depressed, but he knew the 17 days would go by quickly. It was a statement of the Extreme King government's power that they had 4 deified elites standing by to open the door. In most races, who knew how long it would take to gather up 4 deified elites? But because of the delay, Han Sen lost all hope of avoiding Fox Queen. As soon as he came home, he found the flirty Fox Queen lying in his bed. Her eyes were like moons as she smiled at Han Sr. "My good brother, did you register to enter Destiny's Tower?" "It is done." Han Sen slumped his shoulders and moved to sit on a chair. Fox Queen stood up and walked over to Han Senator. She wrapped her arms around Han Sen from behind and let her fingers draw circles across Han Sen's chest. Han Sen felt something soft press against his back. Her beautiful face brushed against his, and her red lips came next to his ear and whispered, "Help me smuggle the Fox treasure out of Destiny's Tower, and I will treat you very well." "It's not as if I don't want to help. I'm just afraid that if I do, I'll never again have the chance to talk with you again," Han Sen said. Fox Queen laughed. She pulled Han Sen's cheek down onto her chest and said, "Why would I let you die? I have a way in which you can steal the item, and no one else will ever know. No suspicions will be flung your way. After that, I can help you leave the Extreme King. Then, the Fox race will be greatly indebted to you. If you want, you can come back to the Foxes with me. After all, we have many pretty women for you to spend your time with." "Don't. I am so unlucky. There's no way I could be fortunate enough to end up in that situation. Why don't you tell me about this Fox item in Destiny's Tower? What is the plan for stealing it?" Han Sen said. Fox Queen looked very sad. She moved around the chair and sat on Han Sen's lap. Leaning against Han Sen's neck, she sighed. "I was trapped inside Ghost Bone Palace for too long. After I got out, I realized that the universe of today is vastly different from the universe I used to know. The Extreme King used to be the sacred leader's slaves, but now they've become one of the highest races. While the Foxes didn't fall, our treasure was claimed by the Extreme King. Because of that, my people have been unable to break through and become deified. We have had to use our beauty just to survive." After pausing, Fox Queen went on to say, "I have been gathering intel since I left Ghost Bone Palace, and I've learned that King Bao was the one who took our treasure. He placed it inside Destiny's Tower. I cannot go in there, so I have had to come and ask you to fetch it for me." Fox Queen looked very pitiable, and her sad expression would have been enough to make most people want to help her. Han Sen knew Fox Queen was much stronger than he was, but he still felt guilty. What is this treasure of the Foxes? Why would King Bao keep it inside Destiny's Tower? Fox Queen hesitated, but ultimately said, "The treasure is called 9-Spin Destiny Mirror. It is a Fox-exclusive deified treasure. When a Fox becomes King class, they need the 9-Spin Destiny Mirror to be reborn 9 times. Then they can become deified. After losing the 9-Spin Destiny Mirror, not a single one of the Fox has been able to become deified. For a higher race, this is so sad. I hope you can understand our plight. And in regards to why King Bao put the 9-Spin Destiny Mirror into Destiny's Tower, I have no idea. Normally, aside from the Fox, none can make use of the mirror." Han Sen frowned. He asked Fox Queen, who was in his arms, "How am I supposed to get the 9-Spin Destiny Mirror out of the tower?" Fox Queen blinked and said, "I can use a fox technique on you. Then, you will temporarily have the powers of a fox. When you see the 9-Spin Destiny Mirror, if it is not bound, you will not even have to move. It will just fly to you. Then, you can hide it on your person and carry it out unseen. It will not be difficult." Han Sen nodded and said, "If that is true, then I can give this a shot. But I can only promise you that I will try. I cannot promise you that I will succeed." Fox Queen immediately smiled. She lifted Han Sen's chin and kissed his cheek. She said, "Good little brother. You're doing me a grand service, even if all you do is try. The whole Fox race will hold you in high regard. If you ever need anything, the Foxes and I will give you all the help you require." "It's fine, sister. If I can really do this, I will help you because of the bond we share." Han Sen sounded as if he was in agreement, but inside, he was thinking something quite different. Han Sen started to pull back to say something, but he saw Fox Queen's tail begin to wave back and forth. After images of the tail became substance chains, and it suddenly looked as if there were 9 tails swinging in the air. The tails swept up and around Fox Queen and Han Sen, trapping them inside it like a cage. Fox Queen's eyes flashed silver, and strange silver symbols flared to life across her snow-white skin. They looked like tattoos, not on her skin but inside it. At the same time, power that gushed like spring water rushed between Fox Queen's lips and straight into Han Sen's mouth. A cool air surged through Han Sen's body. His cells felt as if they had been thoroughly cleansed by a mountain spring. Once that cool power blended into Han Sen's cells, his body underwent some peculiar changes. A perfume that he could barely smell wafted from his body, its fragrance tickling the tip of his nose. I have given you the secret fox technique. Your body now possesses the 9-spin fox power. If you follow my will and use the 9-spin fox perfume skill, you can temporarily wield the powers of a fox. Fox Queen's lips remained locked with Han Sen's, but her voice sounded in Han Sen's head. Han Sen nodded slightly. Following Fox Queen's will, he let the power course through him. Fox Queen sent more and more of that power into Han Sen's body. Han Sen got the power running, and it began to build. The perfume grew stronger and stronger. It felt as if Han Sen was swimming in a sea of flowers. Shortly after, the perfume in Han Sen's body became lighter until it disappeared, and he could no longer smell it at all. A minute later, the perfume was coming back. The scent kept cycling between strong and light, and it did this 9 times. Fox Queen's power inside Han Sen had become very strong, and it combined with Han Sen's body. A very light silver symbol appeared on Han Sen's skin. It looked similar to the symbols on Fox Queen, but it wasn't as lustrous as those. Han Sen's symbol was quite dull, by comparison. Upon seeing the silver flower symbol appear on Han Sen, Fox Queen felt incredibly happy. She had thought that Han Sen didn't have any fox blood, so she only expected him to absorb around 20% of the power she poured into the 9-spin fox perfume. But for some reason, Han Sen had been able to absorb every ounce of the 9-spin fox perfume energy she had sent to him. Because of this, the fox marking had appeared on his skin. Fox Queen was surprised, to say the least. Weird. Does his body contain some sort of fox blood or something? How is he capable of supporting a fox symbol? Fox Queen was confused. But after a second or so, Fox Queen made a decision. She had originally planned to stop the skill here, but instead, she kept it running. The silver markings on Fox Queen's skin continued to expand. The symbols slowly connected with each other, forming a 9-tailed silver fox upon her back. That symbol was so strange. It was like a living fox lying across Fox Queen's pale skin. It had small silver eyes, and they peered right at Han Sen. The more power Fox Queen gave Han Sen, the brighter his silver pattern became. The silver symbols flashed continually, and just like Fox Queen's, they started to connect. They soon started to resemble a 9-tailed fox that shone like burnished silver. Han Sen felt as if all the energy inside him was rushing crazily around his body. He felt like a wild horse without its reins. Things were slipping out of his control. Fox Queen, stop. I cannot take it anymore. Han Sen spoke to Fox Queen through his will. Fox Queen ignored him. Her arms were wrapped around Han Sen's neck, and her legs tightened around his waist. They were still kissing as silver substance chains thrust deep into Han Sen's body. Fox Queen, what are you doing? Han Sen demanded with his will. His face hardened as he began to struggle against her, but Fox Queen's power was able to keep his suppressed. Fox Queen finally responded. She smiled. She didn't move her lips, but her voice played inside Han Sen's ears all the same. I never thought this body of yours possessed such extraordinary talent. You can generate the fox markings. I have used all my 9-spin fox perfume to help you, so that your body can naturally become a 9-spin fox body. It will be great for you, and it will allow you to control the 9-spin destiny mirror far more easily. Fox Queen, do you really think I am 3 years old? Han Sen growled through his will. Fox Queen's smile widened. My good brother, why don't you just do as you were told? I will not treat you poorly. As Fox Queen's words echoed through Han Sen's head, a silver substance chain drifted into Han Sen's mouth. Han Sen's 9-spin fox power was becoming stronger and stronger. The power was almost out of Han Sen's control. It followed Fox Queen's will, running amok inside his body. The 9-tailed silver fox symbol on Han Sen's skin brightened, and it looked as if it was going to come alive. Now Han Sen was certain that Fox Queen wasn't trying to give him a technique. She was attempting to gain control of his body. Fox Queen wouldn't admit to that, of course. She ignored Han Sen's attempts to reason with her as she continued pouring her power inside him. Just as Han Sen believed, Fox Queen was trying to refine Han Sen's body into a 9-spin fox clone. If she did that, she would be able to control Han Sen completely. There would be no need for the precariousness of cooperation. She could save herself the trouble by controlling him directly. This idea had come to her suddenly. She hadn't expected Han Sen's body to be capable of generating a fox symbol. What she said, in the beginning, wasn't all a lie. Han Sen understood Fox Queen, and he had never really trusted her anyway. It didn't matter if she was telling the truth or not, though. He had a plan of his own. If Fox Queen had just been honest and given Han Sen a new ability as she promised, he would have been disappointed. If she had done that, she wouldn't have given Han Sen enough power to fulfill his plan. Han Sen wanted to use Fox Queen's power to push his self-universe cogwheel. That way, he could reach King class. This was a big risk. But compared to attempting to subjugate someone else's power in the midst of a fight, this was far easier. Power that had been summoned for combat would be far more destructive. Guiding it into his body without destroying himself wouldn't be easy. Controlling it with enough precision to move the self-universe cogwheel would be even harder. But now, Fox Queen was sending her power directly into Han Sen's body, and the power wasn't intended to harm him. That saved him so much trouble. Han Sen knew this was the best chance he would get to borrow deified power. When Han Sen felt that the necessary amount of energy had built up within him, he didn't hesitate. He engaged his Dongxian Sutra. He wanted to use that power to push his self-universe cogwheel. Fox Queen felt something suddenly shift within Han Sen's body. She realized what Han Sen was trying to do, and she chuckled deep in her throat. Han Sen didn't speak. He focused on his Dongxian Sutra, using its strength to guide the torrent of power that was surging through him. He tried to direct it toward his self-universe cogwheel. Although Han Sen was proficient with the techniques of Yin-Yang Blast and Yin-Yang Change, Fox Queen was putting so much power into him that it was difficult for him to guide the vast quantity. The 9-tailed silver fox marking covered Han Sen's body like the shadow of a demon. That weird perfume-like smell was growing stronger, and it almost felt as if it was becoming solid and tangible. It is futile. Your power as a duke has a ceiling. No other duke can match your strength, and not even first or second-tier kings could hope to equal you. But compared to me, you are far too weak. Do you honestly believe you can use my power for your own gain? You must be joking. Fox Queen's voice whispered through Han Sen's head. Fox Queen's body was hugged Han Sen's tightly, and her lips were pressed against his as she poured the 9-spin fox powers into him. She controlled the power that came gushing into him, directing it little by little to transform Han Sen into a 9-spin fox clone. Han Sen tried his hardest to guide the 9-spin fox power, but it was staggeringly different from anything he was used to. He attempted to wrestle it from Fox Queen's control and twist its purpose, but she maintained an iron grip on her energy. He was about to make use of a new trick, but his back suddenly felt hot. A scary power started to spread across his back. Han Sen jerked in surprise. He wasn't ready to use the trick he had planned, but a foreign power was being unleashed from his back. That power didn't belong to Han Sen, but he could tell that it didn't belong to Fox Queen either. Something red appeared out of Han Sen's back. Han Sen activated his Dongxian aura to get a better look. The skin of his back, which was originally covered by the fox markings, had turned scarlet. The blood-like color deepened until it revealed a crimson image. That is, ancient blood dragon lady. Han Sen was shocked. The red symbol on Han Sen's back looked like a woman with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a slithering snake. A horn sprouted from her head. It was an ugly image, and the figure looked quite like a phantom. He was certain that it was the ancient blood dragon lady, though. Is this the picture that the prisoner dude drew upon my back when I was in Holy Town? Han Sen knew where that painting had come from. Back then, he had been unable to view what had been drawn on his back. Right before it disappeared, Bauer told him it was an ugly woman. This was the first time Han Sen had gotten the chance to see it. He hadn't realized that the painting was still hidden on his back, or that it would be activated by Fox Queen in this manner. Han Sen didn't know what the painting did, but the power that came out of the drawing was just as strong as what Fox Queen was forcing inside him. It pushed away the 9-spin fox markings and asserted dominance over his whole back. Han Sen's back was in agony, though. It felt like he had been branded with hot steel. The 9-spin fox power had most certainly been pushed back. As the ancient Blood Dragon Lady's painting grew more detailed, a shadow of the ancient Blood Dragon Lady manifested. It stood across from the shadow of the 9-tailed fox. It covered Han Sen's back, while the fox covered Han Sen's chest. The two powers fought for supremacy inside him. The Sacred Blood Statue. Why do you have the Sacred Blood Statue? Fox Queen screamed. She looked terrified. She struggled to free herself from Han Sen's body, but now, something was pulling her in. She couldn't move, and her power was surging into Han Sen's body uncontrollably. What's the Sacred Blood Statue? Han Sen frowned. The situation was spiraling wildly out of control. The blood-colored painting was still there, and his heart was beginning to ache. Fox Queen was chattering in fear. Impossible. Sacred is destroyed. The sacred leader is dead. There's no one living who could draw the Sacred Blood Statue. How is this possible? What is the Sacred Blood Statue? Han Sen repeated when Fox Queen continued to make no sense. Fox Queen tried to calm down a little, but she was still in shock, and she said, it was a way for the sacred leader to control subordinates. If the image of the Sacred Blood Statue was drawn on someone's body, that body could be consumed at any time. As long as the Sacred Blood Statue wasn't activated, nothing would be amiss. The drawing might even be beneficial. It could silently make your body stronger. But the Sacred Blood Statue has now been activated, and so it will start to consume the power and flesh of its host until they have been eaten entirely. Why do you have the Sacred Blood Statue? And is it a blood drawing of the ancient Blood Dragon Lady? Why didn't you tell me any sooner? You almost got me killed. Fox Queen gnashed her teeth and summoned her own power. She wanted to use her power to pull herself out of Han Sen's body, but under the influence of the Sacred Blood Statue, her powers appeared to have been magnetized. Fox Queen couldn't away, and so her energy continued pumping into Han Sen's body. Han Sen could clearly feel the Sacred Blood Statue on his back. It was tearing viciously into his power and flesh like some voracious ghoul. If this kept going, his body might soon be eaten by the Sacred Blood Statue. But the Sacred Blood Statue's power had already blended into Han Sen's body, and its power was already inside him. If Han Sen tried to destroy the Sacred Blood Statue, then that meant he'd be destroying his own body. If that happened, he'd die. F***CK. That mother****** sacred leader was messed up. What kind of sicko creates a Geno art like this? Han Sen swore. When Fox Queen realized that she was completely unable to pull away, she severed her connection to the power outright. She instantly started coughing up blood, and her face turned as white as a sheet. But she had at least managed to disconnect herself from Han's senator. She stumbled away from his body. She had expended a lot of power, and she felt like she had hacked off a large portion of her own body. Severing her power had left her gravely wounded. Without the support of Fox Queen's power, Han Sen's 9-tailed fox marking started to dim. He now had far less energy to combat the ancient Blood Dragon Lady of the Sacred Blood Statue. He was getting consumed. Game over, game over. Fox Queen looked haunted. Her attempt to gain access to Destiny's Tower had backfired spectacularly. Han Sen was getting consumed by the Sacred Blood Statue, and God only knew when she might find another chance to enter Destiny's Tower. Fox Queen looked at Han Sen with a complicated set of emotions. Then she stomped her feet and left. The Sacred Blood Statue had been activated, and Han Sen was on his way to his death. If she stayed around and was discovered, it would become known that she had murdered Prince 16. That would not turn out well. As she left, Fox Queen felt depressed. She thought she could reclaim the 9-spin Destiny Mirror, but her opportunity had disappeared because of her own greediness. In addition, she was now severely wounded. Without the help of the deified item she had planned to steal, it would take at least a year for her to recover.